the good stuff.
Welcome back, everybody, to Goodwill Podcasting with Connor, Dan, and Stone, your movie podcast that today is talking about none other than Kristen Stewart. Yes, the Academy Award nominated actress has a new movie that came out this past weekend, a very interesting movie called Love Me, a sci-fi love story, very interesting tale that we'll get into later in the episode. But we wanted to use that movie as an opportunity to talk about different films in her career, and we have chosen four. That is Camp X-Ray from 2014, Certain Women, and Personal Shopper from 2016, Spencer from 2019, I believe, and then also Love Me as well. But as you counted correctly, that's four movies, which means there's actually four people on the pod today. And for the first time ever on the pod, we have Jagger, who, if you're not watching this on YouTube or like physically watching this, if you're just listening, Jagger has like 4,000 movies behind him. I've never seen, it's really hard to find someone who loves movies more than you. So thank you so much. I'm so excited for our conversation today, but thanks so much for joining us and waking up this early, because I know we always record these super early, so I feel like we always have to say this to our guests. So thank you so much, Jagger, for being with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it. I'm really happy to be here. Really happy to be here for this episode. Kristen Stewart I'm quite a fan. So thank you very much for having me.
Jagger, I wanted to quickly ask. I mean, you're the youngest person we ever had on here, and I think you like represent the younger people in the movie talk space really well, because that's not always necessarily the case, I think. But do you want to talk about like kind of how you got into movies and like where that passion came from? Because I think your understanding and like passion for your age is like pretty crazy to me. I respect it. So do you want to talk about like kind of how you got started?
Yeah. So my parents loved film my whole life. So I sort of grew up around it. And the older I got and the more I just started watching, the more I really grew an appreciation for it. And then I went through a surgery, and after the fact, I had a lot of time out of school. I just started watching a lot of film, and my appreciation from there just sort of kept growing. And then I found all the people in the film talk space, and now I'm here. It's just elevated from there.
Nice.
Do you think you have like one movie you can pinpoint that like really started your love?
Oh, weirdly, it sort of falls between, I don't know, 11-year-old Jagger's mind was blown by American Psycho. And I really loved Jim Carrey's Liar, Liar for quite a good chunk of my life.
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite comedies.
Those are the big two for me.
I think that's awesome. I think my parents definitely also kind of like got me into movies from an early age, and I started watching stuff when I was young. Definitely appreciate them for that. I think it's something where like you either have that or you don't. Like some families, I think, just like don't collectively get together and watch things, or like they just spend their times in other ways, which is completely fine. But I think it's a lot of times just like people that as adults just aren't that into movies. I think a lot of times just like didn't start early, and I think that's very helpful.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's awesome.
I wanted to ask you too, because you both, because I know, Dan, you said your parents have gotten you into movies, and also you, Jagger. Do your parents like still actively go to watch movies?
Yeah, mine do. But
I would say, because I would say my parents were like a movie, like I watched movies growing up, but like my parents probably haven't. They probably go to one movie every 2 years. So they're like me and my brother though. Like we watch movies like nonstop. But I guess I didn't get raised in a movie household, but we watched movies. I feel like everyone watches movies.
Yeah. My parents don't go to the theater often. I think they'll watch a ton of stuff like as soon as it's available at home. But we went and saw Dune Part 2 together. And my dad was like a fan of the book and stuff. But they loved it, and that was a great experience. But not too often. I don't
I was
think.
gonna say my mom still goes and we saw Dune 2 in theaters together, and then she still tries to defend the 1980 David Lynch Dune.
Respect.
I haven't watched. Jagger, have you watched 1980 Lynch?
Yes, and I'm quite a fan.
Hey,
Yeah.
it's funny because my wife like watches not every movie with me, but she watches some movies. I would say about 30% of the movies I watch in the theater, and I go like all the time. But in my head, I'm like, I see an older couple, and I'm like with her. I'm like, I can't wait till we're 70, 80 years old, and all we do is just go to movies with our AMC A list. And she's like, yeah, sounds real fun. I was like, sounds like a blast. Jagger, I saw your letterboxd, right? And you were saying how big of a fan you were of Kristen Stewart.
Yeah.
How did you decide? Because you watched such an insane amount of movies. I think you're in the 80s already for this year, which is like, and you're not watching short films either. You're watching like
Features, yeah.
full length feature films, yeah. So when it comes to Kristen Stewart's work, how did you decide what to watch besides what we're watching today?
Huh. I sort of just typed Kristen Stewart into my local library search bar and just took out the entire list and then just watched them all. So, yeah, I don't know. Some of them
Good
were
place to start.
but some of them were good. Yeah.
I think I'm really happy we're doing this, and I know like, it's not like we're covering some huge release or something, but I think Kristen Stewart is just incredibly talented, and I think she's one of those people where when you look at the Twilight franchise, the fact that it was able to launch Pattinson and Stewart into like so many things and so many great movies, but they were movies that really could have held back their career. And you see a career like Taylor Lautner, his career was essentially destroyed. But I think just the fact that both of them were able to kind of like, and I know they were like iconic movies, but like kind of escape that and get into just making stuff that they wanted to make, I think is really cool. But I think with Kristen Stewart, like, she is one of the most expressive actors that's working. And I think like what she's able to do with like her face and her voice as well, and we'll get into that with Love Me because there's a lot of voice acting, but I think she's able to convey so much emotionally with the smallest things. And a lot of actors today like just simply don't do that, I think. And she's someone who I think she could act in like a silent film and be effective because she just is able to show you what she's feeling or thinking with the smallest things that she does. And I just think she's really, really talented. And this is one of my favorite collections of movies we've watched for an episode easily. So I'm excited for this.
You guys want to get into it then?
Or-
We can do it?
Yeah.
All right. So our first in a chronological order, how we do it is Camp X-Ray. Connor, this was your pick.
Yep.
So if the audience hasn't watched it or heard of it, you want to tell them like a brief synopsis of what it's about?
Yeah. So I'm like, Dan, I tried to start picking movies I haven't seen before for these episodes. And naturally I saw a military movie, so I was like, let's rock it. Basically, young Army private Kristen Stewart gets stationed at Guantanamo Bay to be a guard for the detainees and ends up having a bit of an interesting relationship with one of the detainees who starts off, he's kind of throwing stuff on her and then they become friends at the end. Super good storyline or like chemistry between them. Other than that, showing Kristen Stewart's kind of moral conflict between how the other soldiers are treating the detainees and just kind of how everything is ran at Guantanamo Bay, but also seeing just this whole other world and culture and how they look and treat women, and leads into her and this detainee having, this ongoing friendship towards the end. Takes a lot to get there, though.
Dan, I think your mic's muted.
Yeah, we
or
can hear
something.
you.
Sorry, guys.
We'll edit that part out.
I didn't really know what to expect with this.
Neither did I.
I think it's very interesting because this kind of, I mean, I think last week we got the news that they want to start using Guantanamo Bay to hold migrants, and they're going to basically have a camp there for 30,000 people. Um, I think about 800 people have ever been to Guantanamo Bay as to be detained there. So I don't think people quite understand how big of an operation that's going to be. And that's going to cost of millions of dollars, quickly leading into billions of dollars. And it's not going to be really possible to staff to maintain any kind of quality of life. It's another conversation, but I think it's interesting watching this at a time when it's going to become a large topic of conversation again. I think it was pretty powerful. Um, I think this movie is so reliant on just these two performances. It's Payman Madi and Kristen Stewart essentially on camera for a large portion of this, and if either of them, gave a performance that wasn't great, it would be rough to watch. But I think they both really deliver, and I think it's also I kind of like the way this is shot too. I think they do some interesting things with the camera here. Um, it's all very subtle, but I like this a lot. Especially for 20 coming out 10 years ago, I think it was um, pretty well done and had a lot to say. But what was your thoughts, Jagger?
Um, I also had no idea what this was even about going into it. But I was sort of surprised by the path that this film took from the beginning to the end. Um, it's hard to explain in my mind the way that this movie sort of made me feel throughout its runtime. It connects you to these characters in completely different ways through completely different chains of events. And I think that not only in its writing and acting and cinematography, but in its atmosphere and its visual style, it sort of takes you into this world. And I appreciated it for that. However, I think that there was just something lacking here for me that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Um, I had a bit of trouble connecting with it at points. Although at other points, I found myself fully intrigued. It was a confusing experience for me watching it because I couldn't quite, like I said, put my finger on what it was that I felt like I wasn't getting out of this film because I could name things that I did like about it, but there's just some lack of connection there for me. Um, yeah, I don't know.
I think for me, what you're saying, Jagger, is like what Dan said. It's a lot is just these two performances, and for me, there's really nothing around them that's supporting them that's that engaging. To be honest, in my opinion, what I found most interesting now saying that was there's an editing decision that I really liked was because you have all of these men that are they're allowed to actually in this camp to perform their religious, practices that they want to do, which is great that they allowed them at least to do that. But I thought it was really interesting how they cut the film and they show, them praying at the same time they show the soldiers saluting. And I thought it's a different form of worship, right? It's different if these people are just following what they think is right, what their beliefs are, what they're dedicated to, what they're dedicated to. And it's a really interesting way of showing you just in the editing how these people aren't too far apart from each other, really. And one thing I also liked too, there's a specific thing that happens. You don't necessarily, I believe at the very end, I guess it's a spoiler, not really spoiler, but this friendship blossoms, and um, Ali, Ali asks Amy, like, how did she come here, right? Why is she here? And you do get some explanation of that, but he necessarily doesn't ever explain to her, even though she asks him, how did you get here? But what's interesting is that the director shows us how he got there at the very beginning of the film. So I thought that was powerful for us as the audience. Like she doesn't know, but we know how abrupt and how undeserving he was to get taken away from his home, like he was. I think
Yeah.
that's super powerful.
I feel like it's interesting because I think a lot of his attitude is like, I don't need to explain myself to you, or I don't need to like justify myself to you, um, to be here. And I think it's interesting because I think their dynamic could have gone south really easily at a variety of different moments. I think his character could have fit into a variety of stereotypes again pretty easily. Um, but I think they allow him to just be an actual person. I think you see his anger, um, and I think it's kind of contrast a bit with the other detainee you see the most is Muhammad, the guy with bigger guy, who's kind of seems to speak for all of them and kind of be a leader for them, and is obviously very angry. I think it's interesting you kind of see his anger from a distance, and I think he may fit into maybe some stereotypes, but it's almost like you're seeing Ali without coming to know him, and you don't understand how Muhammad ended up there or what happened with him. Um, but you do come to understand that Ali is there essentially illegally. And I mean, when you break down the entire concept of Guantanamo Bay, like Guantanamo Bay in and of itself is illegal, right? Like around around 1900, the United States was involved all over the world. We were in the Philippines, like we were colonizing essentially. We were in Cuba, and we basically established all these places where we could have basically traded them freedom for allowing us to have military presence and control. And Cuba is one of the places we did that. Um, that base shouldn't still be there, but it is. And it essentially gives the United States a place that starting in 2002, George Bush said basically we could have this little piece of land here where habeas corpus doesn't exist, and we can have people for an unlimited period of time. People can sit there and rot. They cannot be tried. There cannot be evidence as to why they're there. They cannot know why they're there, and they can just sit there. Um,
Yeah, and they address that in the movies by saying that's why we call them detainees, not prisoners, because the Geneva Conventions don't
yeah,
come into play.
yeah, and I think you see very well established kind of like the um, dehumanization, but I also think so. You said you're talking about supporting characters. I think the movie does a decent job there. I think you see a good amount from her corporal, um, and I think it's funny because he kind of and the movie touches on the dynamic between like these Muslim men and women, and he even addresses that, and then he essentially forces himself on her and views women as like clearly not on the same level as himself, and he abuses his power to this private who is a woman. So through his actions, I think he kind of shows who he is while he's demonizing other people based off, I guess, their religion or their beliefs. And then you get to see how Ali actually treats her and interacts with her. Sometimes in conflict, but that
He just gets
conflict is
frustrated. I mean,
yes,
which makes
and
complete
rightfully
sense.
so. And I
Yeah.
think the other interesting thing the movie does is I think it kind of also plays on your stereotypes and your preconceived notions because I think you don't know where this is going to go. And I think the concern might be why is he trying to get close to her? Like, is something going to happen? Is there going to be some kind of attack? Or is he trying doesn't want to escape? Is he trying to establish that connection for a reason? Like, you don't know where it's actually going to go, but there aren't really reasons in the movie for you to be thinking that way. And I think the movie is aware of that. Um, which I think makes it that more interesting because it's kind of this like cat and mouse game until they finally get some kind of connection at the end. And I think they show that with the camera as well because in the last like there's like a 30-minute stretch here of them talking towards the end. And it's all this back and forth and they use the glass between them to move the camera back and forth and it's that consistent back and forth and then I think after she gives him her name, the camera goes inside the room and you're actually seeing Ali and you're actually hearing him clearly. And I think that was kind of them showing you like an actual connection being formed or some actual understanding. And it's a lot of just subtle stuff like that. And like there's a storyline of he wants to read the last Harry Potter book,
I
and
loved that. That was
he's
so
been in there
good.
for so long, and he's had this story, and he just wants to know how it ends. And I think that little storyline also is very humanizing and just shows you like, you know, just a person, right? Um,
Like she calls him Hannibal Lecter. He's like, who is that? Who? I just want to know who that guy is. You're calling me him. He just wants to have a conversation. The thing, he's so came in Madi. He is so like electricity, like right away, which is very interesting because I wasn't expecting that. Because the beginning obviously is just him not speaking at all, but he seems like he's going to be this super serious guy, right? And he gets kidnapped, and you're like, okay, this is the dude, right? But then, because I guess that's subverting your expectations, because I guess that's on me, because I'm expecting him to be one way, but then he turns out just be like kind of funny, but also like unpredictable. And he throws, which I wasn't expecting, he throws like shit on her like the first time they meet. I was like, wait, are they going to become friends? Why did he throw shit? That doesn't make sense. And then she's just like, nah, it's okay. I don't blame him for throwing shit on me because she's a good person. She like understands his frustrations, which is why we're talking about it.
I was gonna say, talking on like what Dan was talking about, like I think the best scene in the entire movie, which I think we'll all agree on, is her kind of talking him out of killing himself. That entire back and forth was fantastic, but also like I think it's so impressive when movies can make you feel physically stressed. Because when she reached for the knife, I was like biting my nails basically because I didn't know what the fuck was gonna happen.
And that's what Dan was saying. Just want a quick note. Like, there's one particular moment, right, where she is about to see in his window and look in his window, and the expressions and her facial acting is incredible. Yeah. It's really solid stuff.
Yeah. Doing some research on this movie though. One, apparently people didn't like this. $1 million budget earned $79,000 at the worldwide box office.
Yeah.
Two, highly impressive. This was shot in 20 days.
Wow.
So super short runtime. And then also other things is Peter Sattler, the director.
He hasn't done shit.
Correct. But for this movie, he got leaked standard operating procedures from Guantanamo Bay and like really studied like kind of how things are ran down there in order to make this. And then also a lot of time on set, the Muslim Public Affairs Council from Los Angeles was consulting on the film.
Do you think, because obviously this isn't like a hoorah military movie, which I was curious if it would be that, military propaganda in a way. It's definitely not. It's definitely criticizing the military, which rightfully so. But do you think the way that they did that, especially in 2014, I think is more surprising? Maybe people weren't open to that type of criticism back then. Do you think that has to play to any of the fact that he hasn't done anything since then? Really, he hasn't done anything. He's done like one movie that like 400 people have watched on Letterboxd, and the only other thing he's done, this was my review, he randomly was a co-writer on The Exorcist Believer.
I don't think any director should be afraid to make an anti-war film after Kubrick did Full Metal Jacket during Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
It's very true, but I mean, there's still people that won't like it.
I mean, yeah, but fuck him.
You're always gonna get blowback, but that's true. Just fuck him. I mean, he's not Kubrick though, unfortunately. I would have loved to see
Goodwill podcasting, so fuck him,
I will say I found a very interesting fact about this movie, and I don't know how to feel about it. So it turns out the guy who played Randy, so her corporal, right? His name is Lane Garrison. I don't know why. This is the only thing I looked up about this movie, and I thought it was so interesting. It turns out he had a personal connection with this film. And it's the fact that in 2006, he was drunk driving and killed someone and was put in prison only, surprisingly, for 2 years, which I think is not enough time for vehicular manslaughter, but it's fine. But he said that the guards treated him like shit while he was in there. So he thought he could give good pointers to Payman Mahdi about like how his character like kind of like give him notes, kind of because of the fact that he had been in prison and treated poorly. I get that, but I'm also like, I don't like, I don't like.
No, yeah.
I mean, he made a mistake. I'm sure he didn't do it on purpose, but I'm like, that was like interesting. And also, nobody knew that he did that either. I think Kristen Stewart and the director like found out. They're like, "Oh shit, okay, I guess use that for inspiration." Kind of wild.
It makes you wonder, casting, like, do they not run like background check? Do they not like look into like who these people are when they cast them? Like that's
He's acted a lot too.
I got a fun story for you when we log off today about background checks.
Okay.
You pulled some on us. He's like, I found out some stuff about you guys. This is the last Goodwill podcasting.
I also thought it does a good job, I think, of just showing kind of like dehumanization, and I think also the way that like a lot of the other soldiers just seem very content to just go about like business as usual and not really challenge anything that they're told or challenge anything that they believe. And I think a lot of that is because they purposefully just keep everyone at arm's distance, right? There's no connection, so you don't see that person as a person. You just see them as a detainee or whatever it is. John Carroll Lynch is the colonel in this. He's good. I mean, he's good in everything he does. I
love John. I was just about to say I love him and everything.
Yeah. Also, Corey Michael Smith is in this too, who's awesome. I love him. It's not a bad cast. I just, it's a very simple movie. I just, it worked for me, and I thought it was a funny little thing, like the references like to Snape, and it's a simple thing, but just like thinking that he's the villain the entire time, and just, I mean,
it works.
Yeah, very just concise. Almost feels like theater, right? And I, in a way, also it reminded me a lot of, in the way it was kind of constructed. It reminded me of Sing Sing in the way that it shows you how bleak and bright and just constrained everything is on the inside, and then it would give you kind of a view of the outside world, and you'd see them kind of living or out on a boat or swimming or whatever, and it's just like, then you would go back in there, and it just like it made you feel so like claustrophobic, and I think it made you think about like how those people were actually living, and asked you like, what would you be like if you were in that scenario? So yeah, I'm glad we watched this. Like I said, especially now.
So I kind of love it and hate it, but there's at the very end there's this one piece I want to talk about where I think it's a good bad writing and good writing, because it's a bit of like exposition right at the very end, and he asks Kristen Stewart like, why is she here, and she kind of explains it to him, which is kind of exposition, but she does it in a way, she uses that analogy of her going to the zoo and why she wanted to go to the zoo in the first place was to see something like different and crazy, and basically comparing that to why she's in the military in the first place. And I thought that was really powerful. Like I said, a little bit of backstory there right at the very end, but I was like, that works, I will say. And also I like the guy Rico, who randomly is like a main character, not a main character, a side character that you didn't think would get that much attention. And I think that guy's kind of unfortunately funny. It's kind of tragic, like how he kind of thinks about the world, but it is humorous because he's like, he talks so fast, but he's like, I don't like this, but they're detainees. We got to do it to them. But then he like goes back and forth, like literally in the middle of a sentence of how he like perceives everything that's going on.
I also kind of like showing his, I don't know if I'm going to call it development or breakdown, but like how, he's like picking up smoking and he's kind of forming into the mold of everyone else around him.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think all the people here just felt very real. Like, I think they all felt like real soldiers. And Connor, maybe you can speak to that more, but like, I think everything just felt authentic, and I was able to kind of like sink into it. But how'd you feel about the like, I guess, military representation? Although they're all Army, correct?
Yeah. I was gonna say overall, like, I don't know as much about the Army, right, as the Marine Corps, but overall, what I saw and what I know, the uniforms looked really good. All the ranks they referred to were right and the proper insignia. But one thing that like really kind of cracked me up and made me happy was, I don't know if every other branch is like this, but in the Marine Corps, we are not allowed to walk with our hands in our pockets. And I was night crew for like 2/3 of my enlistment. And like once you get to night crew, there's like no higher ups around anymore. So you kind of do whatever you want. And then you like kind of get a fuck the system mindset. And you're like, this is stupid. Why can't I walk with my hands in my pockets? Which we call army gloves. And I don't know if they did on purpose, but in this movie, she does not once walk with her hands in her gloves or hands in her pockets until she gets to night crew. And that made me chuckle.
That's kind of cool. That's a good
Way more
thing to point out.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Do you guys have any closing thoughts with this? I mean, it's a very simple movie, but I would encourage people to watch it. It's not. I don't think it's gonna like blow you away, but if you want just a little window into this situation, and I think it's worth to watch. But
I said I think I want to leave it with like this quote from the movie, which I think this is like the entire theme of the movie, or like why these guys are here, right? They don't have to be here, but it's something that Ali says. He says, "I never agreed to follow your rules. If I follow your rules, it means that I'm agreeing that you have the right to give me rules, but you don't."
Yeah.
It's like they don't have control of you. They shouldn't have control of you. So they're like fighting that just by not doing anything at all, which is just insane. But
yeah, I was gonna say,
strong men.
I went into this. I don't know why, but I looked it up on IMDb instead of Letterboxd, which I never do. I saw the budget of $1 million, and I went in and I was like, "Oh god, this is going to be a terrible military movie. Like they're not going to get shit right." I was thoroughly surprised. I don't know what you guys gave it, but I have this at a 3.5.
Yeah.
So.
I'm at three right now.
Same. I also gave it a 3. But this is the first of, I think, 3 IFC releases on here, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And what I learned throughout this was that IFC films tend to have a certain visual style, and I had only really seen from IFC before this, like the Stanford Prison Experiment. And I think that there are a lot of sort of parallel like moments in visuals between this and that. And I think, in my mind, for a film like Stanford Prison Experiment or this, that really works. And I'm just wondering throughout the episode, did that style work in your, or did any of you see any kind of parallels in style between this and the other 2 IFC releases at all?
So I know one was probably Personal Shopper. What was the other one?
Certain Women also was.
Certain Women. I really?
Yeah.
I did not notice that. I would say no with visual styles with at least Certain Women. No, because I think that movie is just shot. It's like such a different setting. I guess I don't know what you mean by visual style. Oh, we're about to get into Certain Women. Yeah. So that kind of is a good transition. But well, the reason why I was going to say, Connor, the reason why this movie is so cheap is because it's one location, right? Yeah. That's why this movie is able to be cheap, which is smart for someone trying to make a film in general. Still impressive though. But the way that Montana is shot compared to this, it's hard to see, visual similarities, at least to me. So maybe Personal Shopper in this movie more than Certain Women and Camp X-Ray.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, Jagger, because I think they're all fairly unique. And I think each of them kind of have something that really stands out to me. The number one thing that, like, I thought Camp X-Ray was, like, pretty oppressive. It's so bright, and it's so, like I said, claustrophobic and contained. I think Certain Women, like, really couldn't be further from that. I feel like Kelly had, like, a very specific style she wanted to go for. And we'll get into Personal Shopper, but I don't know. I think each director kind of maybe, I think they felt like they had a particular style they wanted to go for and delivered on that. But you guys want to get into Certain Women?
One quick thing. Stone mentioned Camp X-Ray was anti-war film, obviously. I think it's not funny, but for lack of a better term, funny that Mahdi was in this, but he was also in a very pro-war film with 13 Hours the year prior. Or was it the year after? But still.
Bro's just trying to work.
Yeah. He's good in both.
Yeah. He's a great actor. Fantastic.
Yeah.
All
right.
No idea what Certain Women was about, by the way. I love not knowing what any of these movies about, especially Personal Shopper. Ugh. But Dan, you want to summarize what this one's about? This was your pick, right?
Yes. Yeah. Certain Women is from Kelly Reichardt. Basically, what she did was take 3 short stories from this woman, Mally Malloy, I think her name is. She's an American author from Montana. And essentially, she kind of takes these 3 short stories and puts them back to back to back in this movie. The first one focuses on Laura Dern. The second one focuses on Michelle Williams. And then the third one is Lily Gladstone and Kristen Stewart. And there is tie-in. Like, there's a tie-in between the first story and the second story, which really matters.
I did not realize that until I just looked at the cast just now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it adds some intrigue to that second story and makes it more interesting. This, to me, is something that if you watched it and didn't like it, I would understand why. I really enjoyed it. I think a lot of times if I'm watching something, I really want to be very like locked in or engaged with it. I found this like really relaxing to watch, which I don't
Felt the same
say
thing.
often. But this is something where like you can almost just kind of sit with it. I also think this feels very American to me. And I think like, I don't know how often I say that about a movie, and I don't know how often I might say that as a positive. And I think it's nice to watch something and be like, I feel like this is speaking to like what America actually is. I think it speaks very much to, obviously this is almost like a Western in a way, like a modern Western, but it's speaking to kind of small town America, the personal relationships that define that, whether it be the first story, Laura Dern is a lawyer. She's representing this guy who basically, I believe, had like a workplace injury. He had a head injury, and they basically screwed him, manipulated him into taking a settlement that was not what he was actually looking for. And it's basically, you're seeing his frustration boil over, and you're seeing how upset and angry he is that he got essentially jobbed here. But there's nothing to do. Like, it is what it is. And I think you see, Laura Dern kind of trying to manage the situation, and it turns into a hostage situation. You kind of see his frustration in the car boiling over in a conversation. Then he takes like a drastic action, and she is the person who, they put a bulletproof vest on her, and she has to go in and have a conversation with this guy. And I think that's it feels very small town to me, right? Like, you feel like they all know each other. The police know the citizens who know the lawyers, and it's all just very personal. And I enjoyed that first story a good bit. I don't want to ramble on for too long. Do you guys want to talk about this in thirds, maybe? Like, do you want to talk about the first third and
So
Jagger,
what
was
was
your?
what was your favorite? I was gonna say Jagger. What was your favorite story?
My favorite of the stories was the third. I think that I really connected to that a lot, and I felt after the film was over that I would have liked that almost as it's like a standalone film. I wish it had been a little longer. I connected with those characters a lot. But in the first story, again, went into this knowing absolutely nothing. It really pulls you in, and it's incredibly captivating, and you really care about not only Laura Dern's character, but I'm blanking on the name.
Fuller.
Yeah, Fuller. You care about him as well.
Jared Harris, I believe, is the actor.
Yeah.
But
he's a huge TV actor, like incredible actor, really talented. He's also
really, I felt like I maybe recognized him.
He's in The Crown, he's in Chernobyl, and he's in Foundation, which is a big Apple show.
He was in Chernobyl. That's it. Okay. Yeah. The writing in this film, I think, is spectacular. I think it feels very natural, and very honest. And like you said, there is a very American feel to it in a unique and natural way. Um, and this was my first Reichardt film. However, I've seen clips from some of her other stuff, like Old Joy, and the way she uses the camera to capture landscapes, there's something really beautiful about it. And I think we get a lot of that in this film. Um, Throughout all of the stories. The second story, a lot of it takes place in a very nature heavy setting, um, as well as the third story. Um, but in the first story, they capture a very rural town more than they do sort of ranch and or woods. And I felt as though I agreed with the relaxing feel that you mentioned. Um, it felt as though there was something to the first story that pulled you into it, and it sort of eased into that third story throughout the second. Like it worked as a gradient where it started in one more tense situation with the hostage situation. In the second, um, with Michelle Williams, it sort of worked towards where it eventually got with that third story, where there's a very ethereal feel to all of it. And I really, really loved the three-story uh, structure that this carried. But like I said, I didn't love the second story much. Um, and we'll get there when we get there, but I didn't notice any connect between the first and second. I'd like to know how they tied together. Um,
I'll say there is a dude with a beard that is in the first one at the very beginning, and he's very prominent in the second one.
was he in the first?
He's
At the-
cheating on his wife with Laura Dern. He's
Oh,
cheating on Michelle Williams. It's the same guy.
I
Which
didn't.
again, I think
that.
just makes the second story that much more interesting, understanding some
Yeah.
context around him.
Yeah, that does change a lot. Wow, didn't even realize that. And the third story I connected with fully, and like I said, I just wish it was that much longer. But yeah, I loved this film a lot.
This is my favorite film that we've watched. So thank you, Dan. I think I want to watch all of Kelly Reichardt's films because you summed it up, Dan. I think this movie, even though it has a lot of important things to say, it is very relaxing.
Yeah.
It's very just pleasant to watch. It really is. And I think, Dan, you said you wanted to mostly at first highlight the first story. And there's one shot, it's like at the very beginning, that I just absolutely loved. It's so purposeful. Like if you just think about like everything on screen, I mean, Jagger, you make films. Every single inch of the screen is purposeful. And it's a reason why that is in the distance.
With the mirror?
Yes. So with the mirror in the corner, you probably noticed too, but like you can see her, she stands up. It's in the very corner, right? And then he stands up and covers her and says something to her, I think in a demeaning way or not very respectful way. And then when he steps away, she has now sat down, showing that like she thinks that she is beneath him, which I thought was very interesting. I love mirrors. I love watching mirrors in movies. But I agree, like I love the way that all three of these played out, like you were saying, Jagger, how it just trickles down in intensity, and then you just are just pleasantly along the ride of the best story, in my opinion, at the very end. But when it comes to Laura Dern's situation, obviously these are women, right? And I like that there is misogyny, especially with Laura Dern's situation. I don't even know if it was misogyny now that I'm thinking about it, because this guy that she's trying to help, maybe a little bit, but this guy that she's trying to help, Fuller, right? He is repeatedly going to her for the exact same thing, and she keeps on telling him the exact same thing about his case and what's going to happen with this case. And I think in her opinion or her mindset towards him, he doesn't respect her. And then finally, when she's like, let's go do this other lawyer who's a man, he's like, okay, I guess you're right, and whatever. And I think she openly says, like, if I was a man, this would be different.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily know if that was what Fuller was going for. Maybe it was. I think Fuller just liked spending time with her. And like he just likes someone to talk to because he can't talk to his wife. So I think that's why he was repeatedly going rather than actually being misogynistic and not actually believing what she had to say. I don't know. What do you think, Dan?
I think you get the feeling that he doesn't really, excuse me, hasn't really probably listened to her well as a lawyer, because I feel like she probably was trying to steer him in the right direction the whole time, and I think he feels very kind of like dismissive towards her, but also I feel like at the same time I think he does, like you said, enjoy being around her, but almost in a way that like she's not really looking for her, I don't think. Like she
No.
literally says like we can't just come here whenever like I'm she's a professional, like she's working, and obviously you know she already has something going on romantically, so like it's just, but at the same time I think there is like kindness there, and I think you do feel empathy from her. But I think she also feels very tired. I think she's probably seen a lot of these situations happen over and over again to people, and maybe feels a bit powerless, but is kind of like trying to fight the good fight. And but even even the responsibility that's put on her to essentially go in as a hostage negotiator in a way, it's
That
just
felt that felt horrible to me.
yeah, yeah. And it's like, but I also will say, um, I didn't feel tension in that situation. I think it felt very much like I didn't ever think like any harm was gonna
Yeah.
fall on anyone, because I think it just, like I said, I think you were seeing him trying to express his frustration, but like I mean you immediately hear him and the security guard just like kind of chatting, and just it doesn't feel tense. Everyone just feels kind of tired and just exhausted from the situation. And um yeah, I thought it was pretty effective. And I second story I think is interesting. I don't love Michelle Williams as an actor, to be honest with
Mm.
you.
Boo.
But I will say I thought that was an interesting story, and it almost reminded me of like a poem, or like a Robert Frost poem or something, like dealing with this older guy who is alone, and this simple morality of like, should we take this guy's sandstone, like, and the conversations about that. Um, I think all three of these stories are very, very, very lonely and sad, and I think um, you see that loneliness in Laura Dern, you see it in Fuller, you see it in the elderly man they're dealing with in the second story, um, Albert, I believe his name is. You see it in Michelle Williams, even though she is, married with children. I think you see it there, and you see it with Lily Gladstone. I think it, regardless of gender, it's there with everyone in these stories, and very pervasive. But I thought the second story was the subtlest, but also very interesting, especially with the added context of this guy is cheating on his wife, and you know that, but she maybe knows that or maybe doesn't.
I think it's interesting because it gives you like the audience a real moral dilemma too. Because obviously, I don't think her husband is supporting her in the way that he should. Obviously, now when connecting the first film or the first story to it, but I kind of get his point of view as well. Like it seems like this gentleman might be a little bit confused from like a fall or something. So even though she sees him not being supportive of her and like what she wants the sandstone. I get his reasoning to be like, hey, maybe we shouldn't take it. Maybe he doesn't want to give it to us. So in my mind, it kind of makes Michelle Williams' character a little bit more interesting because she's not perfect in my eyes. She does, I think, is ethically not making maybe the best decision there because she just wants something. But the point of the story is that her husband is not supporting her in what she wants, which is something that truly does affect her and is not supporting her in other parts of their marriage as well.
And like she says, I mean, she is trying to buy it from the guy. It's not like she's trying to steal it, but
Yeah.
it's interesting, and I think there's the last few shots of the movie kind of wrap up each story, and I liked this one. I thought it was kind of powerful. Basically, they're just showing up to take the sandstone, and he's just kind of there watching, and I think she waves at him, and he just doesn't really acknowledge them back, and I don't know. Again, very simple, but just again, like kind of small town dynamics that you might not think about, but very personal. So the second one kind of grew on me as I thought about it more.
Connor, I know you had to step away for a second. What did you think about the first and second story of this movie?
The first story was arguably my favorite of all three, up until they got to the hostage situation. Kind of like Dan said, like I really enjoyed that story up until then. Even Laura Dern's character, like making the comment while she's on a phone call, like he just isn't listening to me because I'm a woman. But all of a sudden, a man tells him something, and he's like on board. So I like the struggle they show with that. But then once they get to the hostage situation, nothing felt serious. Like, and he just lets the other guy go after joking around a little bit with him.
But is that a negative?
I honestly think that he has brain damage. I think he's messed up in the head from he's not smart. Like I seriously think like something is wrong with him, which is why he doesn't act normal. Like in a hostage situation, you would expect him to act one way, but he doesn't because he doesn't know what is going on. He doesn't know what to do. I think both because of the situation, but also because of his injury. Like guy's messed up. He can't see.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
And this could be my lack of knowledge on how the law works. But would there ever be a situation where they actually do send in the lawyer and not like a negotiator or someone else? I don't know who goes in that situation.
Maybe some rural town in Montana.
Yeah, I feel like it depends on the situation and where you are and the dynamic and the understanding of like who the perpetrator is and what they want. I don't think there's a across the board answer there.
Also, I think Laura Dern knows him so well, right? Even though he is messed up in the head, that even though she obviously thinks this is wrong and she shouldn't go in there, I don't think she's ever really that scared that he's going to harm her. Because like I said, I think she gets the feel like he likes her. Like she knows that too.
Yeah.
So
that's fair.
Something I wanted to call I thought was interesting is the cinematographer here is Christopher, I'm assuming Blavet, and the executive producer of this was Todd Haynes.
I saw
and
that, yeah.
Blavet was also the cinematographer for May, December, but he seems like he's worked with Reichardt over and over again. He was her cinematographer for Showing Up, First Cow. He also did mid-90s with Jonah Hill. The Bling Ring. He's done a lot of stuff. So I thought he did a beautiful job. But something interesting about the third story, I know we kind of wanted to talk about that. In the short story, I believe Lily Gladstone is a man. So they swapped the gender, which I think really works and just kind of makes it more heartbreaking, honestly. But this is where we finally get to Kristen Stewart, where we're talking about, who honestly, I feel like of a lot of the main players here, kind of has the least to do, which is interesting, because she has a whole lot to do in pretty much everything else we're talking about. But Jagger, what were your thoughts on this third bit? This is your favorite?
Yeah, this is my favorite of the three stories. And I think the film in its entirety is sort of going for, as it's put in the Letterboxd description, three strong-willed women strive to forge their own paths amidst the wide-open plains of the American Northwest. I had a bit of trouble figuring out in this story because Kristen Stewart feels more like a supporting actress above all else in this third. But on the poster, it is her. So is this story centering around her or Lily Gladstone? Because in the
Lily,
final
100%.
shot, Lily?
I would say Lily.
Yeah, that's sort of what I thought as well. I don't know. It just seemed like they were pushing it more to be Stewart. But
Also, Lily Gladstone was not a big actress back then, so it makes sense that they would make Kristen
yeah,
Stewart. I mean, why was Dwayne the Rock Johnson on Fighting with My Family? That's the one thing I think about.
yeah,
But yeah, Lily Gladstone, which I don't know how she wasn't automatically big after this.
yeah.
She's so unique, and the like she seems so quiet and reserved, but there's so much going on. Like I need to watch everything she's in because I've obviously only watched this and uh shoot,
Killers
what
of
am
the
I?
Flower Moon.
Killer's Flower Moon. Yeah, my bad. So
There's a very strong individuality and nuance that she has in this performance. So much of it relies on just her eyes, where in the moments where she's at the ranch, she's not even saying anything, but any moments you spend with her, you feel with her, you feel what she's feeling. And I really respect any actor, performer that is able to pull a performance like that. And we talked about it with Kristen Stewart in Camp X-Ray. She could have delivered a performance in, as you put it, a silent film, and you can still get the same amount of emotion and range out of her. And we feel that a lot with Lily Gladstone here. And I do think Kristen Stewart gives a great performance in this. But Lily Gladstone, through this whole film, being the really least known performer here, gives what I'd call the standout performance of the whole film by quite a lot. Uh, in her voice, in her eyes, in her body language, everything carries this character. Everything holds this person that she is portraying. She completely transforms. And I loved that. Um, I fully believe that she portrayed a person of this area really well. Like everything feels right in this environment, in the way that they play it out to be very calm and relaxing. She holds all of that on her shoulders and carries it with her through, I don't know how long this story was, about 40 minutes ish.
Yeah.
Yeah, through all 40 minutes of it, you really do feel everything she does in the moments of quiet, in the moments of dialogue, in the moments where she isn't even on screen. Like there's a shot in that classroom where it's behind her head, but you can still sort of tell the way she's thinking in those moments. And I love that. I really do. And I think this entire film has that, but this story more so than the others, in my mind.
I wanted to say, I wanted to get your guys' read on what is actually going through the mind of Kristen Stewart, Beth, and what sort of this dynamic actually is. Because to me, the interesting thing about this is kind of showing the like kind of a collision of like rural America and um like city pe- people, like urban America in a way. And I feel like you're kind of seeing that collide, and it's in little things, like even when she goes when Jamie Lily Gladstone's character goes out to Livingston and she's walking down the street and she's kind of just taking everything in, and she sees a shop and there are mannequins like dressed up like a ranch hand essentially, and everyone else is dressed like you or I would be dressed. And I feel like even like just in that shot, like she's seeing her life as just like an aesthetic. Um, and I thought that was really interesting. But I think and in their conversations as well, the last conversation I think at the diner, Lily Gladstone is kind of talking about some kind of personal challenge. I don't remember what she was saying, and then Kristen Stewart goes, "Yeah, I was worried when I got out of law school I'd be selling shoes." And there's just such a like disconnect there, and you could tell she just didn't register anything Lily was talking about, and is just like from this other world where, you know, it's they're actually so different, but um, I think Lily still feels some kind of connection. But do you think that Kristen Stewart was feeling the same way? I guess is my question.
It's tough because I mean, I guess one thing that stood out to me when I saw Kristen Stewart's character was the way that when she was back in the city was the way she was dressed. I don't know why, but that's what came put me off, or like that's what I caught first. And she's like in a dress, like she's in a long skirt, and I know that's just maybe just an outfit choice, but I feel like that is so city in a way. Like you wouldn't see someone in a rural town wear that. Like Lily Gladstone would never wear that, right? So just in the way that they're differently dressed shows me maybe how Kristen Stewart's character has been brought up, or how she acts, and like what type of society she's used to, because she's not used to going out and maybe eating at the same diner every single night, and there's only one thing to do, and driving back. Like she doesn't find that area interesting at all, which is why she doesn't want to go there. It's not even the fact that obviously, unfortunately, she doesn't have the same feelings, I don't believe, for Lily Gladstone. It's the fact that she doesn't find anything out there of any interest whatsoever. And I think that was probably a high paying job, which is why she was going and doing that. But she's still like, that's not even enough. Like that is so off putting to me that I would rather be here in the city. And it's hard for people who haven't been brought up that way. And I wanted, just while you're touching on it, Dan, that also stood out to me when she saw. I don't even think she looks at them. I don't even. Oh, she might have. She might have been looking at them and turns a corner. But the cowboy attire in the window. I think all three of these stories, and I wanted to wait until this very end to talk about this, but it's all about, I guess the proper word is domestication of Montana, because every story has a little bit of, hey, this used to be something else, and now it is, you know, metropolized or whatever. It's the fact like they go into the mall and you see those the Native Americans in their garb that are like dancing in the mall and everyone's looking at them, right? And they're being entertained by them. But obviously in the setting, that's a little bit off-putting. But then in the second movie, it's the fact of what was the sandstone. Sandstone, I believe, was an old schoolhouse from however many years ago that is now broken down and been forgotten and is like in somebody's yard. And there's two things I was trying to figure out. I was like, okay, those are the two things that connect to me in the first two stories. And there's two different things that connect me in the Lily Gladstone one. One is just the relationship in general, the fact that technology has advanced so much that, unfortunate to Lily Gladstone character, she can fall in love with someone who is 4 hours away from her. And because of that distance, she gets her heart broken, right? That's something that wouldn't have happened back in the day. But then there's also just one shot that I absolutely love. And you're talking about the cinematography and we're talking about the landscapes and everything. It's when she's on that farm. There's these, it shows it multiple times, but there's this shot where it's just an entire flatness, a flat plane. But right in the middle of this flat plane is a fence, right? Just that one subtlety that, like, yes, you can tell that there is a continuation here. Like, this is one strip of land, but someone has like boarded it off and it is their property now. I just thought that was really powerful just to see just one line going across this big open space. But sorry, a little tangent there, but
Yeah. Um, I also went kind of a last thought. I the end of this. Basically, she is making this long drive back home after having a conversation with Kristen Stewart, where like there's just complete disconnect again, and it's obvious like there's just she's wasting her time. Um, and she falls asleep and drives off the road. And I just felt like I kind of felt the same way as I did watching the like hostage negotiation. Like it doesn't feel like there's really a sense of like dread or urgency there. It's just like this kind of quiet, subtle little moment, and it's very sad. Um, but again, it doesn't feel like she's in danger. It's just. I thought that was very powerful, and a great way to kind of end that story.
Yeah.
I would say technically that's not how the story ends, right?
Yeah, but it ends that third of the film. Like there's an epilogue that shows you all three of the stories, but that is the end of the second, or at the end of that like portion. And it goes
Character
because
story.
it goes from that back to Laura Dern, and then to Michelle Williams, and then back to her. So
Right. Well, I wanted to, well, just you saying the end of her story, I wanted to talk about the epilogue because it's something about Kelly Reichardt that I don't like, but it's really powerful. She does this thing where you're expecting something to happen and it doesn't happen just because of the way the camera is framed or something in the shot. I don't know if this was wrong for me to think, but it gave me anxiety to see Michelle Williams just running by herself in the woods. And I was afraid that someone was going to run up behind her. I think that's just maybe a common thought that people have, especially when it comes to women. And then she also sits and stares at a river, right? And there's a porta potty behind her. And I was expecting maybe someone to come out of the porta potty. I don't know why. It's just there. That like, why was that the reason why that was in the shot? Is it just to show you that? I don't know. But that's something I thought about. But then when it comes to Lily Gladstone's story, there's multiple times where she's just walking through the city and Kelly allows you to see inside windows into restaurants, right? And you're hoping and you're looking for Lily Gladstone's character in these like buildings, hoping that you can find Kristen Stewart because you want her to find Kristen Stewart. I think that's super powerful and that keeps you way more engaged for this, as my buddy would say, boring movie where it's just nothing's going on. Like the movie is keeping me engaged by making me so invested in these characters. And then at the very end of the movie, the last epilogue, which I think is the best story, which is Lily Gladstone, it finishes with her. She's the last epilogue. And you just see her working, right? That's the end. You just see her working for an egregious amount of time that's exhausting to the viewer. Because I think you're just hoping. Because it's also beautiful too, because there's like this one square window in the barn and you can just see the mountains, which I think is just gorgeous. But you're just hoping that, like Lily Gladstone did for Kristen Stewart in some way is going to show up at the barn and see her and actually feel these things for her. And that scene goes on for a long time. And in a sense, nothing happens, but it goes on for just the right amount of time where you're like, is she going to come? I think that's so powerful and that's so smart. And it was a great way to sadly end this.
Yeah.
yeah, I agree.
Like I said, I really love this movie. It was awesome.
Any closing thoughts on this?
There's two movies we're talking about today, this and Personal Shopper, that I really feel like I need to go back and rewatch, and I'll probably get a lot more out of them. Because I watched both of these last night at like 9, and then the other one finished at like 1. So I think I was just like dead tired, and I feel like both of these I did not get what I needed out of it. And I could see it there. I was just too tired. But out of all of them, I do think Certain Women is my favorite of the day, and I have it at a 4 right now.
That's crazy because you're like, I didn't get everything I think I need to out of Certain Women, but you're like, it's a 4 out of 5, my favorite of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's pretty easy to absorb. It's not like some kind of like super complex movie. I think it's pretty easy to absorb a lot of it. But something I definitely like to watch again.
It makes me really want to watch First Cow. Supposedly that's her best movie, and it's just about a cow. So I'm down for that. Sounds like, pour me a glass of wine. I want to watch a cow.
Does anyone on here think that she should have won over Emma Stone in 2023 for Best Actress?
Oh, I mean, it's tough. No. Probably not. No. Which is unfortunate. Nope.
Do you guys want to get into Personal Shopper?
Jagger, does Jagger?
Yeah.
This is your movie. Do you want to kind of like give a quick breakdown or and also talk about why you chose this, or just?
Yeah. So just quickly, the description: Maureen, mid-20s, is a personal shopper for a media celebrity. The job pays for her stay in Paris, a city she refuses to leave until she makes contact with her twin brother who previously died there. Her life becomes more complicated when a mysterious person contacts her via text message. I stumbled across this film as a Criterion blind buy, and I I watched it sort of late at night the first time I did, and I was just sort of stunned by all of it. The environment, the cinematography, Kristen Stewart's performance, just the way that everything plays out in this film is, I mean, when we get to Spencer, I think that there's sort of some tonal similarities between this and Spencer, but I think this takes on sort of this mysterious, very eerie life of its own. Um, I I don't know. I'm assuming based off what you guys have said about the other films, I went into this knowing nothing about what it was going to be, sort of assuming it was the same. Um, and there was a lot of moments where I felt like, wow, I am really surprised by the fact that this is what it is. And on rewatch, it sort of carried that same magic where there's really, I haven't seen many films that feel like this one does. I mean, I've seen films that are similar in ways, but there is only one personal shopper in my mind. This is an easy 5 for me. This is one of my favorite films of all time. It's all in the atmosphere on this one. It's just, I love it to death.
I was gonna say, diving into it, I read the synopsis and I went into it thinking this was just going to be another Devil Wears Prada. So I was thoroughly surprised because I'm not a fan of that movie.
Could not be farther from that.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. Yeah, and Kristen Stewart, I think, is just, this might be my favorite performance of the day from her. Just like how she's showing the grief she's carrying, and then also like the fear of this random number texting her throughout, and then just also the fear lingering behind her of this tumor that she has. Is it a tumor?
That's a heart condition.
Oh, it was a heart condition? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But Stone, you look like you want to jump in.
Well, it's just, this movie's so, not strange, interesting. Like how they choose to, because it kind of seems like two different films that kind of blend their plots together in a way. Like you have everything with her personal shopping and her boss and also her boyfriend and something like that. And then you have also this storyline about her trying to connect with her dead brother. And it's very interesting how they go together. I will say, I don't necessarily love the personal shopper storyline. There's some very surprising things that I thought they would explore with that they don't. I'll give you an example. Well, basically, this movie is about someone who is trying to connect with their brother and looking and using the conveniences of technology to accelerate that drive, basically. Like technology makes you believe in so much things just because so much information's out there that you can believe. You can find a story that'll say, hey, I can find out, like, my grandfather passed away, right? And I can find a story right now on the internet about someone who contacted their grandfather. And I can research that and try to do that. It gives me hope that I'm going to be able to connect with them again. And that's really what this movie is about, in my opinion. But there's an interesting thing that she does. In casual conversation, somebody tells her that this painter back in the day, right, did these abstract paintings and kept them hidden. And for many years until the style became popularized, right? And then they found these and they asked this painter, like, how did you make these? And I believe she says some spirit, right, came into me. I used this ability and this is what came forth. I thought in a weird way, and I'm surprised she didn't do this because, right, this woman is trying to look somewhere within herself to find anything that she can use to contact her brother. And I'm surprised they didn't use the paintings along with the fact of how she picks out these outfits for her boss, because she's seemingly good at it, right? You can think of like outfits, right? These different colors, these different designs as like a form of art, as a form of paintings, right? And she is nonchalantly, maybe this is for the audience, I don't know, but she like doesn't seem like she gives a shit about personal, like, I mean, she does wear the clothes, right, at one point, but she doesn't seem really passionate about it when she's really doing it. She just seems like she's kind of gifted in that way. And I was surprised she never connected the two, in my opinion, about like this person who believes that she talks to spirits was really good at painting, and I, who believe I am a medium, I just have this gift where I can just create all these great designs and put them together as well. Surprised they didn't go that route. But in my opinion, everything with the personal shopper just seems like an excuse to have somebody, some plot line. Sorry, my dogs are fighting behind me. Some plot line where they can get someone to text her, right? They use that. They have to have a terrible boss, which I don't think she's ever really that bad of a boss. They emphasize that so much, but they barely show us that at all. But yeah, just the side piece man is very important. He's the most important part of that story to fuel the text messaging.
Yeah, I definitely I think I definitely disagree with you. I think that her profession is like incredibly important. Um because I think what she's doing when you actually think about it is so mindless and soulless, and she has absolutely no identity. Like the movie literally being called Personal Shopper, she is defined by this thing that is she is just an extension of someone else. And like she has had this experience with the death of her brother that she clearly has not properly processed. She is dealing with mental illness that she is not dealing with. And what she pours herself into is just doing something that requires it doesn't allow her to be her. Like she's doing something constantly for someone else. And I think there's a point, there's such a focus in this movie of the moment where she finally takes some of these clothes and puts them on herself. Um, and she like masturbates and all that. Like that scene is important, I think, because you're seeing her like actually have some kind of expression of self. And I think a lot of this is someone who's just completely lost and has absolutely no identity. And a lot of that is kind of stemming from trauma, but she's using her job, um, which is really, when you think about it, just worthless and meaningless. But that's what she's pouring all of her time into, and that's what's kind of like consuming her. Um, and I mean, I think like you see, the movie shows you Kira, her boss, doesn't care about her at all. Like literally can't give her 5 seconds to listen. In the one scene, I think you just see like you understand how much of a like kind of hapless existence that would be. And just basically kind of a tool for this uh obscenely rich person to, you know, have the things they want. Like what could be more empty than that? And I think this movie is kind of her moving beyond that, and then also moving beyond this farce essentially that she's created in her head, where she's trying to find her dead brother that isn't there. None of that is real. None of the supernatural elements of the, spoiler alert, but none of it is real in this movie. And that is the tragedy of it, right? Like both of the things she is pouring her time and energy into are just a complete waste of time. Um, and I think you see her come to terms with both of those things, and it's a very strange movie. Um, in a good way, but I think it's interesting because and listening to the Sayas talk about this, like he makes it clear like nothing that happens is real, and this is her coping, and this is her mental illness. So I think it's just that's a very interesting route to take this when you literally are showing like ghosts on the screen.
I was just about to say I don't agree. I don't like. I don't
You
think that.
cannot agree, but the director has straight up talked about it. None of that is real. It's all fake.
Right.
It's all in her mind, and
Exactly.
that is the tragedy of it. Because and the ending shows you that because she realizes this is just me. This is my mind creating all this, um, and how do you cope with that? And it's uncomfortable, but that's the point.
I just don't think there's any point in time where you don't believe that her witnessing a ghost like vomit plasm is fake. It's a very interesting decision that he would include that if that's just in her mind. Um, that's just my thought. I mean, obviously that is what he was going for, and that is, you know, what she's going through. But I just don't think that worked in that one particular area. Also, I think it would have been way more interesting. Like I'm thinking right now, if the audience also along with her believes that she is talking to her brother, we are on this ride with her. We want her to connect with her brother, right? I just don't think at any point really anybody believes that she is texting her brother, right, during that exchange, even though she does, right, and almost sends his name. But that texting goes on for such a long time, a long, long time. And I think she eventually realizes that it's not her brother. But I think right away, and that just pulls me out of the movie a little bit because I'm like, okay, I can't get behind. Like it goes for so like it's probably 30. I kind of exaggerated the time frame when it came to the final fight of Revenge of the Sith. I would say it's about 25 minutes where she is texting on the phone, which is an egregious amount of time. Um, so, and I just kind of knew who it was the entire time, and it was just, it wasn't that interesting to me.
I
Yeah,
guess.
I mean, I mean, you assume she's texting Ingo, but the texts keep going after he's dead, correct?
I don't believe so. No,
Jagger, do you remember?
I don't think so.
Okay.
no. Like I said, I think it would have been way more powerful if we thought that she was texting her brother. But from right from the start, as soon as that guy's introduced, you just know that that's him. And I think that just takes something away that could have been there.
Yeah, I think the point of the entire movie is like her delusion, right? And I think she's just kind of talking herself into everything, literally until the last shot of the movie. And I think like that's kind of what the intended takeaway, which I think makes it that much more sad because I think everyone kind of deals with grief differently and processes things differently, and you're seeing a very unique take on how someone would deal with that, especially with the added layer of the kind of dread of knowing she has the same exact condition that her brother had, and that could kind of shake her at any time. Definitely a movie with that kind of induces uncomfortability. Um, but yeah, the texting sequence is interesting. It is very long, and she's kind of like going back and forth between having that conversation and just moving about her day, and it's an interesting choice because of how long it is.
She's just like picking up clothes while it's going on. Like how am I supposed to be engaged right now? Like she like, goes into a shop, picks up clothes, like tries on some high heels. Like I get it. Like she is kind of interested in this stuff. Like she wants to be in these really nice fashionable clothes. But then she would like spend some time in like London or Paris, and then she goes back and it's like answers one other text message, and then she gets on the train, answers another text message, and then gets off the train, answers another text message. I'm like
Well, that's like
okay.
real, right? Like that's like how someone would go about this scenario. Like I think
It's mundane. Like it's just repetitive. It's very repetitive.
yeah, and I mean it's funny. Like certain women is very mundane, right? Like it's the mundane, the mundanest of the mundane, I would say. But like I don't think that necessarily makes something bad. Um,
Someone clip that.
I think there's definitely a very mundane nature to the sequence, but I believe that that's really a lot of what sells the moment is you're supposed to understand how she's feeling and how she's perceiving all of what's happening, and it takes you into her mind with her sort of delusion of it, and to just really show in what feels like real time how she's going about her day and how she's handling this situation as it's putting itself onto her. It sells the moment. And I love when films take a very mundane look at things. I think that can really work if it's done right. Um, there is a sequence in the Bellatar film Workmeister Harmonies where it opens with like a near 15-minute long scene of people just dancing essentially in a circle while being talked through like a sort of lecture on the solar system in a weird way, and it works as a metaphor that works through the rest of the film. But I think showing this moment for such a long time and really investing you in it, which it can completely make or break a film if you do it wrong. And I'd argue that Personal Shopper does it very right in my mind, and entirely subjective. But I think that it is a film that it's either going to really work for you or really not. But in my opinion, it really helps convey a lot of the messaging that the film is trying to convey. So I don't know. I think I could totally understand the complaint, but I don't know. It worked for me.
I also like we don't get enough unreliable narrators. I think it's fun, and it just lets the director do whatever the hell it is they want to do. And I think that's enjoyable. This movie might not like spoon feed you that as hard, but I still like it whether it's subtle or less subtle. I think it's more movies should use that.
Connor, what did you think about this?
Right now I have it at 3.5. I could definitely see it going higher.
Wait, did you watch this first or Certain Women first?
This first, or I'm sorry, Certain Women first. This was last. This is the one I finished at like 1:30 in the morning.
Okay. That's not not an easy movie to watch.
Yeah, but with that being said, I do think this might be one of the more relatable Kristen Stewart roles for me, merely for her dialogue over Skype in the beginning, when she's like, I'm working so much, I feel like I barely have time to do what I actually came here for. Like, it feels like real complaints, and like maybe complaints we've all said in the workforce at some point. So that made me feel like pretty connected to her. And then also, like we said, like these are kind of just visions and stuff that she's making up in her own head, more or less. And it felt real to me because I've had insomnia in the past and not slept for days. And I've had real visions that like are not there. So when that all came together, I was like, I know what she's going through.
So did all of you, when you saw that ghost go, blah, all you could be like, yeah, that's in her head. Not a chance that's real. All of you?
No, it tells you that at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. You just connected the dots that. Well, okay.
Well, I didn't connect the dots. I listened to her say, "It's just me," and that's how the movie ends.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you guys ever talk to my wife, she can tell you a story about the time I called her talking about how there was a tortilla painting Salvador Dali paintings on my nightstand.
How long did you not sleep for?
The longest I've ever gone was like 5 days, I think.
Yeah, that's getting to like hallucinations and whatnot. That's impressive.
Yeah. And then they prescribe me Ambien, and my body just refuses to sleep on Ambien. So then I really start like having visions. It's a wild ride. I refuse to take it anymore. It's terrifying.
I'm at like 26 hours awake right now. Maybe I should try it.
Don't
do that.
And I have 2 days of work. Like I work tonight and I work tomorrow night. So it can be some memorable days.
I got to like 60 hours, 60 something hours in college, like getting ready for exams and writing papers and stuff. And then I got mono and tonsillitis at the same time and went to the hospital for 3 days. So
hell yeah.
It's not good for you. But yeah, I thought this was good. I think it's funny you said, Jagger, that people would either love this or hate this, because I think I generally agree with you, but I felt somewhat in the middle on it, but definitely leaning more towards really liking it. I gave it a 3.5, but I think that could go up. But it's like you have to be able to buy in, right? Like you have to be able to settle into this and be comfortable and take the ride, which I don't think everyone is always willing to do. But
so what did you not 3.5? What did you not like? Because I feel like I'm the only one who's been like, yeah, I don't like this. I don't like this. So far in this conversation,
I think it's paced a little strangely. Like I like what it has to say. I don't think it's always. Do
you like the fade to blacks? I'm not a big fan of fade to blacks. Like this just fades to black like 20 times. I guess I've just never liked it. I think cuts are way more interesting in my opinion.
Yeah, I kind of said that about Presents. That movie is horrible, by the way. But it just like fades to black over and over again, and then just like, oh, here's the camera. Let's watch this family be bad at acting. Um, but yeah, it's this movie is definitely it's kind of strange. And like I don't find the story itself or her character necessarily the most engaging, but like it doesn't take away to me from like what she's feeling or like what she's going through. It's kind of hard to explain. It's not my favorite movie, but I did enjoyed it and I took something from it and I thought it was powerful. So that's why I'm kind of like in the middle on it. And I love the ending. I thought the ending was incredible. Like that last scene like kind of sold the movie for me in a way.
Guess that's the point of it, huh? Hopefully that last scene just hits.
Yes.
I think I had this at maybe a 2, but then the more I thought about it, this is the one I thought about the most. The more I liked it, so it's up to a 3, I think, right now for me.
All right.
Damn, jumping a full star just from thinking.
I mean, sometimes I got to think.
That's a scary game.
Jagger, do you have any closing thoughts or just like if someone's considering watching this, like what would you kind of say to them or
Yeah, I mean, it's a very patient film. This one is not trying to get anywhere quickly. It is going to take its time to get where it wants to go. And I think it has a huge payoff at the end, as you sort of said. That final scene sells it. So just go in ready to take your time with it and ready to really, I don't like to say suspend disbelief a little bit, but you have to let it take you on this ride and sort of do its thing. But I love the payoff. I love the whole picture, and I do agree with you, Stone. It takes a little bit of thinking after the fact to sort of let it all marinate. But once it has, I would recommend it wholeheartedly. I love it to death. Yeah.
do you guys want to move into Spencer?
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
any of us are going to be able to close out Personal Shopper like he just did.
Oh,
That's pretty good. It's your 5 out of 5, so makes sense that you would do that. Yeah, this was my pick just because I think this is a very important movie in obviously Kristen Stewart's career. I mean, she was nominated for Best Actress for this. It would have been in 2022, which I think is very deserving. And one day, I mean, we talked about it at the beginning of the episode. One day, I think Robert Pattinson will also get nominated for something. And it's just
17.
cool. Not Mickey 17, probably not. But it will be cool that both of them one day. It's just it's cool. I was just thinking about other young adult fiction like stories and stuff like that. And there's really nothing like the way that these two have just catapulted off of Twilight. It's one of the coolest stories really in movie history, in my opinion. Anyways, little tangent there. But yeah, Spencer is about Princess Diana. And it is I believe it says a fable at the beginning of a tragic, true like life, basically. And I did not know that going into this. I think for all of us, was this our first watch of this movie?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dan, I know that you're very into history. Obviously, this is very much rooted in history. Did you know that this wasn't actually very much like 95% true going into it, and that's why you haven't watched it till now?
You're saying was I aware that it wasn't true?
Yes.
No, all I knew that it was I literally just knew that it was about her.
Okay.
I didn't know much about any of these going in, so
Nice.
um
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So this is the gist of the whole movie is this is the very last time that the royal family is together before Princess Diana leaves her husband Charles after she finds out that he is having an affair, and they're all together at the Sandringham estate in Norfolk, England. And yeah, so this basically just takes the idea and the knowledge that everyone had of Princess Diana and the circumstances at the time and kind of blends them together into this fictitious story of something that could have happened. And I have to say, I like this a lot until I looked up how much of it is not true, which is a lot. And that was very disappointing to see. And Dan nailed it. I mean, you released a very small snippet today of a video where you ranked, I think yesterday, ranked all your movies that you watched in January. It's the fact that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the reason why Princess Diana sticks out so much in history is because she was so different than the royal family, and she was a part of the royal family. And that's the reason why people were obsessed with her and idolized her and chased her. And basically, this is the exact, and that's what drove her maybe into what eventually happened to her, possibly, or into her unhappiness. So it kind of feels very inappropriate to take this fantasization. I don't know if I said that word correctly, but this thought and belief you have about this idol of yours, and just use that love that you have and just create something brand new that you just want to tell more of her story, but it's not hers. It seems very off-putting.
I was gonna say, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I didn't know much about Princess Diana for a long time, and that's like my wife's like icon. So she knows a lot of the history of Princess Diana and everything. And this was the one movie this week my wife watched with me, and even she was like talking about the inaccuracies of it. So I looked it up, and that's when I found out that like none of this is real, even though it's advertised as almost a biopic. So that really bothers me about this movie. One of the other things my wife pointed out while watching this too was the fact of like how much focus they put on the food and the chefs in the kitchen, even though she's bulimic, which is like a strange
I didn't think about that
thing to do.
The focus on her bulimia in this movie, what are we doing? Like, why am I watching her stick her fingers down her throat and throw, like, this is just like this movie pissed me off so much. And I've seen people compare this to Joker, and I really like that. I think this is equally as dog shit and equally as just so convinced it's like doing something profound or has something to say, when it's literally like, guys, she's literally Anne Boleyn because her husband cheated. Do you get it? She's literally Anne Boleyn. Let's have her hallucinate Anne Boleyn. When Anne Boleyn popped up, I was cracking the fuck up. It's so funny. It's so funny. I cannot get over it. Like, and the audience, the movie thinks its audience is so stupid. It literally has to spell out, guys, do you understand who Anne Boleyn was? Like, it's so painful to watch, and that's all it gets from her is she was bulimic and she was cheated on. That's what, like, and this was a real person, and it turns her into this like caricature. And like Kristen Stewart, I feel like is like overdoing this. The accent kind of comes and goes. It's not a good accent. Like, and everything about her is just this like hyper emotional, tense, anxiety riddled, fragile person at every single moment. It's this performance is just flat the entire time. And there's no depth to this person. This is a cartoon, and every single member of the royal family is a cartoon. And like nothing, it's just like, and I understand it was not intended to be like a biopic or whatever, but like
it comes across that way, though.
yeah, that's how it kind of sells itself. And if someone didn't know, they're gonna think this is like real. And again, they waited 24 years after she again was killed, in my opinion. They waited 24 years to make this movie, and then you just don't even give her like any kind of. This isn't like a very human portrayal. And I also think like the Anne Boleyn thing, Diana was cheating on Charles repeatedly. A lot of people think Diana cheated first. So like if all you can get, which again, I'm sure he's a piece of shit, right? Like I don't blame her. But to just boil her down to she got cheated, like it's just so lazy. And this movie to me is like
It kind of feels misogynistic. That what you're saying right now is that the fact that got cheated on just sends her to this giant spiral. Like she's helpless and cannot,
And she
like
wasn't. She's
she
keeping
can't
her
live
own
her
kid.
life.
Like
Exactly.
and that would be a more interesting and more human portrayal, and showing more of the dynamic between her and Charles would have been more interesting. And I just this is so shallow and just like hollow and just I didn't like it.
I was gonna say, I mean, I think the best scene and the realest scene, because it is based in truth in this entire movie, is when they're in line at the drive-thru at KFC. Because that was like crazy to think about that Princess Diana actually made her kids sit in like drive-thrus and lines when raising them. That's the best scene.
Yeah, I mean the entire ending is like contrived and made up, but like you literally the last scene is where you see her have the most normal, relaxed interaction with the kids, and like that was nice, but I just everything this script, everything is just like a ridiculous metaphor and just so ham-fisted and just like beats you over the head and just
Dude, genuinely, I think one of the worst line deliveries I've heard in any movie was in this one. When he's talking about making his kid go bird hunting the next day. And he's like, I used to hate it too, but sometimes you have to do things you hate.
Good
It
line.
was awful.
Good writing.
and I did any of you guys watch I guess Pablo Larraín's like other biopics. Like, have you guys seen those, or like, did you watch?
I know he just focuses mostly on women,
Let me
like famous women.
So I watched Maria last year, and I actually liked it. It
Okay.
was about Maria Callas, and I feel like that style, and like all the melodrama and stuff. Like, I think it works for Maria Callas, but I don't think it really works here. Jagger, what were your thoughts on this, or what was your experience with it?
So I gave it a 1.5. I I'd seen a few documentaries about Princess Diana before seeing this. She's someone that I was familiar with. I wrote a paper on her for school. Um, and at some point, like, I don't know, half an hour in, I Googled, is any of Spencer true? And it said, like, this is a piece of fiction. And that just, it makes no sense. There's no reason, like, if they wanted to make a movie with this story, they very well could have done that without including Princess Diana at all.
Thank you.
It could have been an entirely fictional piece. This didn't need to exist in the way that it does. I think Kristen Stewart was fine. I think the score was great, but it was so melodramatic for this film. Like, it was so over the top and huge, and that none of this needed to go the way that it did. None of this makes any sense at all. I don't get it. I can't wrap my head around it. And even more than that, I can't wrap my head around why this gets such great reviews. Like, this is a praised movie.
I think when you go for this aesthetic, people are just like, "Oh, she's really acting. Look at her, she's sad." But like, some people are just easy to like convince that something is meaningful or like profound because you literally just if you just and when I said it on Letterboxd, just make this about a fictional person.
Yeah.
You created this character and you tell this story, and I'm so much more on board. I still might not think it's a great movie, but I'm not going to be pissed off about it. But this was a real woman that people loved, and she again just died. In the cosmic scheme of things, like she just died.
Yeah.
And I just feel like it reduces her to like nothing.
So like there's parts of this that are true, right? Like the that you can like get where they got the idea. Like it is emphasizing her bulimia, but the fact that they did like it was a tradition to have that scale when you walked into the estate and you
Why?
sat down on the scale and you had to gain 3 pounds. I get that, right? She could have had some thoughts going through her head, being insecure, maybe possibly about her body that she didn't want to do that. But the thing is, Timothy Spall is completely made up, and he is the second main character of this movie. He's like the villain of this, and he is completely made up. Now, he is a combination of like people who were there in real life to keep Diana in check, but it wasn't one dude, and he wasn't like giving her the book on past dead queens, you know. And then also what I think Jagger, I saw this on Discord. You mentioned this one where it's just egregious and it's just like unnecessary. Like she did, I believe there is recorded moments in history where people found out that she did harm herself. I believe cut herself.
Mhm.
But the fact that she takes that, like what's it called, like the pliers, like wire cutters, and just like digs into her arm. Like she's not an animal. Like that's insane. And also there wasn't a relationship between like I just forgot about this. The relationship that they tried to insinuate between her and Sally Hawkins' character. Like
Yeah.
that's completely false.
It's like this will be dramatic. Like let's go for this. Like
Yeah, and the emphasis on food with the bulimia is weird, but I did like one thing about her life that people said was she was very much connected to the staff and she found like closure in them and talking to them rather than the royal family. So that was interesting, but you didn't need to have one of them be like, I'm in love with you, Diana. Didn't necessarily need that, but
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but like even then, I still didn't feel a real connection with her and the staff. Like between her and the head chef, like that felt very forced. I know you're referencing Maggie mainly when you say that.
I do.
I love Sean Harris though. I was just I literally at the exact same time.
Yeah,
I'm with you. I agree. He was fun in the movie, but I just didn't feel a real connection like to any other staff member than Maggie between her. And like you said, that's a real thing. Like she was always pretty connected to the normal people.
Yeah.
I just think it's hard because I guess kind of what we're doing is like we're saying this wasn't the movie we wanted it to be, but at the same time, the movie that it is, I don't think it's doing a lot of that stuff well either. Like I think a lot of the performances feel forced. I think the script is horrible. Um, and I just think that when you look at what the movie has to say, it's almost nothing. It is just this like surface level, just slop. And again, the Anne Boleyn thing is so funny to me. Like it's so funny. Like Anne Boleyn stops her from like jumping
Killing
down the
herself.
stairs, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, what is this? What am I watching? This is a comedy? Like what is this? Yeah.
I'd also like to ask why parts of this film try to sell it as like a horror. And I've seen a couple other people
Like the main theme.
Yeah,
Like-
it tries to sell itself as a horror.
Yeah. It was a weird choice. And like they literally turned this into like a haunted house almost kind of situation. And like that's how it's shot. Which like again, I understand they're trying to convey her mental state. But she's more than that, right? Like it's just it's such an simplification. I don't know.
Yeah,
And I think it's a
wild.
shame. I hope we get hopefully someday we get a movie that like deals with her better. I would love a movie about her death and about the end of her life when she got away from the royal family because that's something that deserves to be talked about and I think would be interesting. But
honestly,
Like, go ahead.
give me a movie like Certain Women about her life, where like the first part is all about her childhood and how she was raised in the royal family. The second part can be about her time with Charles and leaving Charles, right? And leaving him. And then the third act can be about the end of her life, but like make it kind of feel blocky. And I still think I would like that a lot.
If I remember correctly, I haven't watched the movie, but I think that's what Steve Jobs does. I think the one Michael Fassbender, like it shows you 3 different distinct times of Jobs' career.
I never watched that one, but I watched Jobs with Kutcher.
I think the best thing for biopics to do, and this is just kind of a general standalone statement, you have to pick something to focus on, right? Like the worst biopics are just like these little shallow gloss over everything, not really focus in on anything. Like you have to pick a moment. Like I think Selma is brilliant, right? And it focuses in on the march and it focuses in on all the events there and you get to know Dr. King from that moment in his life, and you see his flaws, and you see his brilliance, and you see how he interacted with the government, and Johnson and all that. And you get a snapshot of all of that in that moment because they picked the right moment and then they executed it. But if you just dance around, like touch on this, touch on that, touch on that, it's not interesting, right? Like that's what people don't want. They want detail. So I think they're hard, but
I would say, how did you like A Complete Unknown?
I
Because that is a specific moment of Dylan's career, but it does span some time.
thought it was good because it stayed. I thought the kind of like thesis of A Complete Unknown was like it focused on Bob as a piece of counterculture where Bob just wanted to kind of fight against whatever it was that people wanted him to be doing. And I think that I will say the more I've thought about it, it's a little bit of a like it's not flattering to Bob, and I don't need it to be flattering, but he's painted as a complete asshole through and through, which
Hasn't he come out and he said he likes the movie?
No,
I think they did a pretty good job.
He was involved with the making it, but
yeah,
I think it was a a little one-sided in that, but at the same time, I think it focused in on his music and the transition from folk to rock and roll and the pushback there, and that was an interesting thing to focus on. I think what I wanted, and I really liked the movie, but I wanted a little more of Bob was a political figure. Like Bob was a voice of the people in a lot of different ways, and I wanted a little bit more of his like political leanings or his ideologies and like his opposition to Vietnam. Like I wanted that kind of explored more, and it feels like it was a little more safe just dealing with his music from a kind of a high level view on like genre and performance, etc. So we're getting off base, but I did like the movie. And again, I think I try not to criticize things into just it wasn't what I wanted to see and look at it for what it was. But again, I think Spencer is bad regardless. But yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say if we ever like saw one, like I get you should focus on like one big aspect of Princess Diana, and maybe that is towards the end of her life. But I think you still need to put in like the big focuses on she shook a man's hand who had AIDS, which was like unheard of. At big events, she was walking around without shoes, even though she's like royalty. Like emphasis on stuff like that, I think would be highly important. It would be needed for a movie about her life if you were to do it right.
I think this movie still almost kind of paints her as like she doesn't really feel like an everyman type person. She still feels very kind of like haughty and like I don't know. She almost just feels like a different subsection of royalty rather than more of a normal human being. It's weird. I don't know if that makes sense.
And her curtains were open.
Yeah.
Dude, that scene where she eats the pearls made me so uncomfortable, though.
I like that.
That was awful.
Like, yeah, but it's so silly.
No, I agree it's silly, but like the thought of biting down on something that hard and the crunching sound that it makes made me so uncomfortable.
Yeah, good scene in like a horror movie or like psychological thriller for sure. But this is not Hereditary. This is but yeah, I don't know.
I enjoyed of everything in this film to try and give some kind of positive. I enjoyed the scene where she was sitting with the two kids around the candles. I think that scene brought some kind of development. It was able to show a little more of Stewart's performance than just sort of everything else in the whole film, everything. I don't know. I enjoyed that moment. I enjoyed the moment on the beach, even though it was really out of place and random with Maggie. I think that those were good moments of performance. But if I'm going to take it as what it is instead of what I wanted it to be, I think this very much could have taken like sort of an 8.5 approach where you know who it's about. you're able to sort of infer, but it's not directly calling them by the name of a real person. It sort of is able to fictionalize, and you're aware you're watching what is intended to be a piece of fiction rather than what is sold as a biopic, promoted as a biopic, and has no mention other than the use of the word fable of it being anything else. So, I don't know.
Like, has this been done with anybody else's life? Like, has there been a movie about Prince or, this iconic figure that it's just like not very true at all? That's
Undoubtedly.
not like you said. Yeah, like you said, but like I thought about the fact that a lot of Napoleon sometimes didn't happen. But like you said, Dan, the context of it is like this happened 28 years ago she died?
Yeah.
That's way too soon. That's way too soon. If you're gonna make up shit.
The only other example I can think of kind of like that, Stone, is in NWA. Like they paint Eazy-E at the end of it like he was broke and his life was in shambles. Like that was not true at all. Like he still had money. He was putting out his own songs. He had his own record label. Like Eazy was not struggling at the end of NWA like they showed.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure, Stone, if we dug into that, I'm sure there's plenty of examples, but
I guess I meant like recent like people who have passed away. Obviously, there's going to be people in history where there's completely fake, but this is like you said, Dan. This is so soon.
Easy.
Just a weird choice. Like, yeah, and I mean, I
So
think
strange.
I'm sure I think from what I read, like people kind of associated with her didn't really like this very much. But I don't know.
I've heard The Crown is great at accuracy. I've never watched The Crown, but I heard that's like they make sure like they're spot on as much as possible with everything. But what did you? So you had it at a 1.5 Jagger. Connor, what did you have this at?
I have it at 2.
I gave it a 2.
I have it as a 3. Woo! A little positive over here. I will say, I think the movie looks good. Like, there's this one shot that everyone loves. It's just I like seeing a big, huge, beautiful dress sprawled out on a bathroom floor. I just think like the wideness of that, and it's like a tiny room, but the wideness of the camera, I just think looks really interesting. And I like the idea
Do
of
you
having.
think it looks as good as people say it looks?
Like
I feel like there are some things about it that look a little bit like cheap and tacky, and like, but other moments look great. I don't feel like it's that consistent. I don't know.
there's a lot of
destroy.
That pearl neck. I think is the pearl necklace story true? I think that might be true. No,
I have no idea.
Not maybe at this gathering, but he might have like.
She literally got upset that like she was given a pearl necklace that was the same that Charles gave Camilla, whatever the hell her name was. But that's it. It's like the vaguest of inspiration, and then they just create some made up shit, and that's the movie. Like it's.
Do I think all of this looks good? Not as good as Certain Women. I'll tell you that. The movie's awesome. But I don't know. I think the music does help out a lot when you do have visuals and you're like when you see something, but also like hear like some good music at the exact same time. It lasts with you longer. Like Johnny Greenwood does do a really good job in this movie. He's incredible, the composer. So that could help out a whole lot.
The music is good. I have no complaints there.
Yeah, the score is incredible. But yeah, I have it at a 3. But are you ready to talk about Love Me? What a movie. Jagger, I know you love this. Dan, I saw your review, so I'm excited to talk about it. So this thing, I think this thing premiered at like last Sundance Film Festival, like a year ago.
Yeah.
And everyone heard the idea of it, and they're like, "What the fuck is this thing?" It's like a satellite and a buoy fall in love with each other. And it's played by Kristen Stewart and Steven Yeun.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, what did you I'm interested, Dave. What did you think about this? This has a lot of interesting ideas to it. And a lot of visual interesting ideas as well.
Yeah, I think again, this is one of those movies almost everything we've talked about today, like you're either going to buy into or you're not, and it's really important whether or not you can. Because if you don't buy into this, you might leave. And funny enough, There was a couple that just walked out like 5 minutes in.
Same thing. It was only me and one other person. They left. I was the only one in the whole theater.
But I think if this movie didn't have a clear point or a clear message, I think it would have felt a little bit scattered or a little bit like meandering, sort of. But like, I mean, I think the movie is talking about something that's, fairly relevant. I think it's just the way that people in kind of a modern age of dating will present themselves in a way that is not representative of who they actually are, and they're so focused on trying to be whatever it is they think someone else wants them to be, they lose touch with themselves. And I think it shows very well the impact that can have on someone and the place that can leave them in. Um, but also it shows, I think, what it's like when you're able to move past that. And yeah, I thought this was. I think the portion I didn't like very much. My least favorite portion was the Avatar portion. Something about that animation.
I didn't like it either. It looked like Sims a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I respect it and I get it, and I think it's interesting showing like kind of a stepping stone between, you know, being a buoy in a satellite and being flesh and blood Stephen Yeun and Kristen Stewart. I think it was important to have that, but a little bit off-putting. But I think it's supposed to be off-putting too. So it's kind of like a weird. It's kind of in the middle on it. Um, but I liked it. I found a lot of the like. Again, I think if the humor here doesn't work for you, you're not gonna like it. I thought a lot of it was really funny. And I mean, I've talked about it a few times, but voice acting to me is just so underappreciated. Um, I think it's incredibly hard, and I think they both kind of nailed it. And I ended up enjoying it. But Jagger, what was your experience with this?
Yeah. So I had heard about this movie last year when it premiered at Sundance. I heard some buzz about it, and then I forgot it existed until you reminded me of its existence. Um, and so I went, and this film opens with a stop motion shot of the creation of Earth all the way up to the apocalypse. And
It's pretty dope.
I sort of loved that. And I just wanted this film to take a couple of, like, with a plot like this, it needed to take big steps. And it took them. I think that this was a very, very ambitious piece. And I'm very happy with how it came together by the end of it. This is the most I felt like I was thinking during a movie since I saw the TV Glow, where I was at the theater and it was really stretching my brain a little bit. Like, there are very minute details here, whether it be the fact that when they're in that home, there's supposed to be a very sort of artificial feeling to it, and you can continually see in the reflections of their eyes like a ring light to make it feel this certain way. And not necessarily a spoiler, but when at the end of the film, the way that this film ends, there is no longer any reflection of a ring light in their eyes. And it's these steps from the stage that it opens to the buoy and the satellite to the avatars, which in my only complaint with this film was that the avatar bit was just a little too long. Like, you felt it. You really.
I was gonna say, when you mentioned the stop motion, I was thinking like maybe that could have been like, because like Dan said, it makes sense why it's there. It is a stepping stone for getting into flesh and blood, but it's also very long. So maybe there should have been something before that. Maybe like stop motion. Maybe just one more step. We just needed one more thing besides being in Sims world for about 45 minutes.
And that Sims world, it felt like there were a few certain bits that they had points that they wanted to hit while they were in the Avatar segment, and it felt like they hit some of them a couple of times. Like they did a few things for a little too long, and I think they definitely could have tightened it up. And I believe if that part was tightened up, I'd be near, like, no complaints. I thought that everything else here worked in some way or another. And when it was doing something where it was kind of, as you put it, it's either going to work for you or it's not. It's going to do this thing that it wants to do, and you can't stop it. And I think it landed all of its punches in those moments. It explores a lot of themes of just what it means to be human and the way we portray ourselves online. There are parts where it explores like sexuality, where it explores finding meaning, it explores love. There's so many ideas packed into a 90-minute film, and it goes for it, and I really, really respect it for that. So I had a great time with this. There was one other person in the theater. I wish there was some kind of a push on this promotion-wise. It's weird, but I think if it finds its niche, it can. This movie could do very well, and I think this could get a lot of acclaim. But I saw no promotion for this at all, and I think that's kind of sad. Yeah, great film.
I'm assuming they didn't. Go ahead, Stone. Sorry.
I would say it's a Bleecker Street, and usually Bleecker Street films, unfortunately, they all. I'm glad they put them out in theaters, but they all bomb. Like
Yeah.
none of them. I mean, there is one. I think it's what is the one actress that everyone was saying should be nominated this year that wasn't nominated this year for Best Actress?
Hard
That was
Truths.
Bleecker Street. Hard Truths. That's a Bleecker Street movie. So that's like the one movie I could think of that's gotten some popularity from them. But I mean, ISS last year was a Bleecker Street movie. I remember there was a movie last year with like Lawrence Fishburne and Casey Affleck. That was like a sci-fi movie.
Oh yeah.
I think that was Bleecker Street. Dan, that one that we watched it the exact same day. I can't remember what it was about. It was like about it was like the 1200s. Like it was like a monster or something like that. It was like a horror movie. Remember which one I'm
Out
talking
of
about?
Darkness.
Yeah, Out of Darkness. I
Out
think
of
is also
Darkness.
Bleecker.
Yeah.
Yeah. So their movies always just. I'm glad they put them out in theaters for like
They
people
did
like us to
Sasquatch
watch.
Sunset too.
Yeah.
That one actually, I think that's such a weird idea. Just like this, like I'm glad they take chances on these movies and they put them out there, but maybe that's where all their budget's going.
And they did The Return, which I just watched, which is the Ralph Fiennes Odysseus movie, which
No one watched.
I watched it. I liked it.
Were you the only person in the theater?
I watched it at home. I bought it. Yeah.
Okay.
This movie, like, all the portions dealing with actually what's happening on Earth and with the sun and with the buoy and like those, it looks so good. Like those sequences are beautiful, and I'm assuming they made this for like $0, which makes me a little bit, more understanding. But like they did a lot with, I'm assuming again, a small budget, and I think it looks really impressive. And I think it's also just nice. The directors are a couple, and I think from what I can see, they've been together since they were like teenagers, and they've been making stuff together since they were teenagers, and they're married. And I just think that's a really nice thing to see, and they make this like incredible love story, and I think that's a really nice thing.
This thing is like the definition of a mixed bag. Like if you look at the curve on Letterboxd, it's like dead in the center, which is really interesting. But I wanted to say that when you were talking about how good this movie looks, I saw something that stood out to me that I want to applaud, is that the fact that not the satellite, I believe the satellite's complete CGI, but the buoy is an animatronic. Like that is something that somebody's operating. That's why it looks so good. That is like, oh, for sure. I'm almost 100% positive that is an actual robot, I guess it was what it would be, that they are controlling. It does not look fake in any way to me. But I would say one thing I love the messaging of this movie a whole lot, but the thing is, you have these two beings that don't necessarily know anything about anything. So in a way, the messaging has to be repeated over and over and over again. Like it got a little bit too preachy for me. Like I didn't think there were enough moments of because these they just want to consume information, right? That is their goal. They're trying to figure out what is their purpose, who they should be, um, who are they, and I don't know. I think they were more telling us, but that's also makes sense for their characters as well. But I also think they were doing that more for the audience as well to be like, we're going to say something really profound here, which I think it would have made more sense to like cut it back just a little bit. Like, especially like right at the end, Kristen Stewart goes on like this tangent that I wasn't expecting where she's like, oh, we can have a baby and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, I thought we were settling down. Like you're back into this yet again. Um, and I didn't think that one was necessary, and I think they could have wrapped it up just a little bit sooner. Like I got it, I got what they were trying to do, and it just kept going. So I thought they could have ended it, but I mean the movie's 92 minutes long, so it is pretty short.
Yeah, I like that because I think what they did with her was kind of comment on, and I think the first portion is commenting on the way that, and I don't want to get too like into life, but I just think like
Do it.
everyone kind of has this view of like how life is supposed to go and what they're supposed to be doing at any given point and how they're supposed to act. And I feel like a lot of people are you can kind of end up on autopilot just existing in the way that you think you're supposed to. And I think a lot of people carry that into relationships. And I think you end up with a lot of people, especially in the world of online dating, where it's um, easy, I guess, to find a quote unquote relationship or just find anyone. But just because you can do that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good use of your time or it's going to be something that's beneficial to you. And I think showing them just kind of like going through the motions over and over again, and then I enjoyed that sequence because that's so many people are in that spot where they're not in the right spot, but then they'll just be like, "Oh well, I'm X age, so I'm going to get married now, and then I'm going to have a kid, and then I'm going to do the X Y Z," and then it's like maybe you're 50 and you look back and it's like, what am I doing? Like, do I like this person? Like, I don't know. Um, and I just think a lot of people are just kind of on autopilot in life and relationships and stuff. And I think the movie paints that pretty well without her stopping to, because you can tell she has no concept of self, right? And when you have no, self confidence or no sense of self or no understanding of who you are and what you actually want or need, you're just going to throw yourself into something because you think it's what you're supposed to do. So I I like the way it portrayed that. Even if at times some of this was repetitive. I think this could have been maybe like 70 minutes. Um, but I didn't mind spending the time with it in the end.
I like that it didn't talk down to because these people, right? Essentially, who are I forgot their actual name. It's like Faye. I can't remember the actual influencers that they copy their names. It's I know it's me and I am
It's
is the name of the
Deja and Zach.
Liam?
Deja and Liam. Yes.
Yeah.
there you go. So I like that the movie doesn't necessarily make fun of influencers, right? It never talks down. It says, hold on, like this is stupid, right? It's just I am realizing like, hey, this is not I don't enjoy this, right? This is not who I am, and that's what breaks everything down. Because I think that's important because I think there's a lot of people who are flesh and blood, who aren't buoys, who aren't satellite, who get roped into these types of videos, these types of vlogs, these types of people. And it is addictive to a lot of people out there. Like to watch individuals like this have the perfect life or what they think, their life should be. I mean, my wife said I never watched people vlog or whatever this is, but my wife used to watch shit like this in high school. Like what this couple does. So, like I said, I like that it doesn't talk down necessarily. Like it doesn't ever call it stupid. Like I said, I think in my opinion, it's just I am discovering like we need to do something different because this is not working for me right now. Right? That's all I think that they really allude to the fact that this isn't for these people, right? Is the fact that if you have somebody in this state of their life, right, who thinks this is what happiness is, right? They're watching this on the screen. This film is able to slowly break down the fact like this is actually what is important. Finding out who you are, finding out who your partner is, finding out what you want to do to get each other, and you have an open slate. You can do whatever you want. That is most important. Nailing that stuff down first. I
Yeah.
think, like I said, I think it's very important that they don't talk down to social media in this. They actually use it as like a tool in their comedy, but they never necessarily make fun of it. Which I also thought it was funny that they're using like Instagram, but they're posting like memes from 2011, like the way that I am was like designing them. I was like, I haven't seen anything that looked like that in a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I mean, everyone like that, when people are broadcasting their lives to the internet, all they're broadcasting is the highlights, right? And that's kind of the danger of social media. And I think we live in an era where anyone can go on their phone, and no matter how old you are or young, you can see people that are your age, that are extremely successful and happy and this and that and doing all these things. And I think that can leave people with a feeling of emptiness. And I think, you know, that's kind of dangerous, right? And you have to understand a lot of that stuff is um, packaged, packaged in a way that it's intentional, right? And you're not seeing a real person. You're just seeing like the best of reels and just these, moments that are so contrived and it's not real. And I think a lot of people don't have a sense of that. And if you don't have a good sense of self, you might latch onto that and think that's something to aspire to. So, um, yeah, I thought it was pretty powerful. This has a 42% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. So I don't know.
Critics hate fun. They hate fun. They've never tried water like this water before. I thought that was funny. I like 25 glasses of water. He doesn't know what water's supposed to taste like. He's just waiting for something to taste good. But that was funny.
Yeah, it's a simple thing, right? But like, and I enjoyed the portion of them just like actually experiencing things as people and actually having those experiences and bonding through that and having like actual joy after being so forced in their like avatar forms. Thought that was really good.
Yeah, if I could sort of latch on to what you were just saying about like sort of the way we present ourselves online and how dangerous that can be, I think that the way that this film explores that and looks at that by essentially personifying exclusively this Deja, me, whatever it may be, just showing them as exclusively what you're able to find online about this person, just bringing only that online persona to life. And then you have I am being a unbiased person just trying to discover life as it's coming at him and showing what happens when you sort of collide these two concepts of a fresh person completely separated from this internet concept. And it's not like how they handled it necessarily in something like Poor Things, where it's a somewhat matured person in I Am being put next to this completely engrossed in the this is what life should be, this is someone living happily, I want to do this. It's how that comes to be and how that shapes. I'm sort of scatterbrained. It's early, but it's it's just what happens when you put those two things together and you compare and contrast them. It is that juxtaposition of the two. It is the trying to figure things out as it is, trying to figure it out shaped on what they see online, and it explores that in a way that I found to be incredibly interesting. I'm trying to form the words. They're in my head. I'm trying to get them out.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah. You get what I mean?
Yeah. I looking at like reading some reviews and stuff of this, I don't know. I feel like I've seen a lot of like cynicism and just like it doesn't. This is not a movie that I feel like should be easy to like dislike or like hate. I don't know. I think it's coming from the right place and has a clear positive message. I don't know. I think one thing I wanted to quickly maybe touch on is it is interesting when you see stuff like this, right? Because I have a video in my mind. Did you watch Companion, Jagger?
Yes, I saw that last night.
Okay. There's a video I want to make about Companion that I don't actually want to make because I don't I feel like there's so many ways to say it that sound really bad.
Mhm.
When you really think about Companion, what is it saying? Like it's essentially a robot that has decided it doesn't want to be a robot anymore and it doesn't want to do what it was designed to do. And the design of that can be unappealing to a person, but the robot is still a robot, right? And I think this is another movie that is putting forward the idea that, you know, AI or a robot essentially in a buoy or a satellite can become a person with a soul, right? And become a real entity. And I think, it's a nice thing to watch, but when you think about what the movie is really saying, I think it's interesting to start seeing stuff like this pop up where it's like there's something to talk about there, right? Like I don't know. And I think with Companion, I think the real problem, I guess, and how I was able to frame Companion positively is I feel like it paints the people that it says don't create this thing. Don't think that you have the ability to control it because once you create it, it's out in the universe. But should I be cheering for this robot to have sentience and be killing people and like it's a robot like at the end of the day,
Yeah.
so it's a little strange, and I think it just Companion makes the human being so evil around it that that's easy, but you have to think about at the core, and it's like you watch Ex Machina and you get to the end.
Mhm.
Are you cheering for it? Like, are you actually like, or are you just because you're basically putting an allegory for the way women are treated, perfectly which is needed and relevant, but you're using that and then you're putting it onto AI, right? And you're putting it onto a non-sentient being. And you're co-opting that valid point to do something else at the end of the day. It might be a really long conversation. I just want to know what you guys think about all that.
So Companion, guys, yeah, it's sad and everything, but she's a fucking robot. So who's really at fault here? Obviously Harvey Guillen. I love Harvey Guillen. The one guy, short guy with the glasses. I love that actor. Like, I felt bad for him. Little spoiler,
Yeah,
but for
yeah.
anybody who hasn't watched it. But anyways, what do you guys have this ranked at? I had it at 3, solid 3.
Love Me?
My bad. Love me, love me. Love me.
Yeah, very, very solid 4.5 for me.
I gave it a 4.
Nice.
Oh wait, really quickly, do you guys have
Oh.
thoughts about any of that? Like, just
Yeah.
about
Oh,
the idea of like trying to humanize artificial intelligence in film, and now we're seeing it in back-to-back movies. Like,
That's interesting, man. I mean, you said, what is, I think, what does it have to say about artificial intelligence? Maybe nothing, because it is a robot. It's more so to me like the changing of Jack Quaid's character throughout the film, because he gets way more evil throughout the entire thing, right? And you realize what kind of person he is, and what really people who own AI, the majority of the time, what they really want. They just want something to control. They want something easy and they want something to control. And when that's taken away from them, then that's when the claws come out, basically. Now that doesn't always happen. We see something a little bit different in the movie when it comes to ownership, when it comes to AI. and companionship. But to me, that's the main drive because I can't remember her name in the movie. Sophie Thatcher's character. Yeah, does she really change that much as a character? Physically, she does. She does alter herself, but it's more like, hey, I don't think you should do this to me. I don't think it's right, and I'm going to try to get away.
But should a robot be able to decide this is not right?
I guess that's something we don't have. They don't exist yet. That's the thing. I don't know.
The thing is, that will exist in our lifetime. That will exist.
Well,
like companion will be real. It's already, and if you look in the world, like that kind of thing is already like in the works. So like, it's going to be a real conversation to be had. And should a robot be able to decide, I don't want to be a robot anymore. I want to do what I wanted. Like, no. Ideally, no. Right?
So what is the classification of something that is living? Right? I think that's something that has consciousness that can make its own decisions. Something like that. When is a God? When does a robot have rights to its own body? Like that's crazy shit to think about. But you're literally there's something that is, it's something that has consciousness that you bought, right, and you possess. That's kind of messed up.
But does
in
it
a way,
have consciousness, or does it have the concept of consciousness that was put into it by a human being? Because it's all just lights and clockwork, to quote iRobot, right? Like Isaac Asimov was dealing with this stuff, way before us, and
I mean, theoretically, my mom put the consciousness in me and my dad with the genes, right? I wouldn't have it without them. So no matter what,
you're not a robot, right, Stone? You flesh and blood. Like
I don't know. It's like it's tough. It's like having something ethically, like knowing something, no matter how it was created, right? That has consciousness, right? That it can hurt as they can in companion, like they can feel pain, right? That they're emotional. Like these ones in companion, if we're just talking about a companion, are that way. So
but they don't feel pain. Their wiring tells them that they are feeling the sensation of pain, right?
yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. It's tough. I don't know. I wasn't expecting this at the end of this video, or this episode, but I like it. Like you said, Ex Machina is a little bit different because our second main character, I can't remember Gleason's character's name in that, but he's actually a good person. So that one's way more challenging. And Companion's a lot more easier because everyone's evil.
Were you gonna say, Jagger?
I was going to say that, I mean, it's really a two-part conversation. I mean, there's the question of movies portraying it and the question of movies portraying it as like a commentary and as a legitimate thing. Because you could essentially say with a lot of concepts, for something like Companion, you're going into Companion. Some people are going into Companion looking for just a fun horror movie. Some people are going into it looking for its commentary. And it's a questionable thing because it's very obvious that by the end of this movie, they want you rooting for Iris as a character. The moral questions of it are where it sort of becomes a topic really well worth discussing. It's hard, because as you two just put it really well, it is a robot in the end of the day, but it's something very, very, like, it's within view. It's realistic in the current state of the world. And it's something that people have been talking about forever. They talked about it in 2001: A Space Odyssey in 1968. They talked about it in Her in 2013. Of what happens if a robot gets too much power. Ex Machina, I really loved Ex Machina. They portrayed it somewhat questionably in retrospect, but it still handled it relatively. It was fine. But in something like Companion, they're overtly trying to get you to be on the side that's like, yeah. And you put it in your review, it could be taken as essentially propaganda. I mean, it depends on what way you look at it, and it's a touchy thing. It's a fine line between being even remotely acceptable and yeah, we shouldn't be promoting this. We shouldn't be endorsing it. I loved Companion, but if you look at it that way, I could totally understand where you're coming from. I think it's a discussion well worth having.
And again, I think the onus, like the way I kind of got myself to a point where I was thinking about it more positively is just the people that created this and find it easy to control, and then the person who jailbreaks it, right, and allows it to be violent, like they are responsible. Like if you have a computer system and you're going to manipulate it and still think you can be in control, and you are actively aware of the fact that you're allowing it to be violent, when it's violent, it's like fuck around and find out. Like that's what you get. So I think there was it was framed in a way that I can get it, but
I like the
interesting movie.
the jailbreaking idea. Like I've never seen that done with like an AI robot before. I thought that was really interesting.
Which was way too easy to do. Like the person can just be like, "Oh, I'm gonna go in my settings and make this robot kill people." Like what? Like,
Also, it didn't really feel like a horror movie. Like there's blood in it,
it's a
but
thriller. It's a psychological
it's like a
thriller.
fun. It's like fun too. It's like more
It's a dark
popcorn.
comedy.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, sorry for that tangent. But I think with Love Me again, you're seeing robots essentially grow a soul, and it's like, is that a thing? And that's you saw the same thing with the Wild Robot. I love that movie. It's about a robot developing a soul. That's what the movie is.
Yeah.
So, just something to keep an eye on. But
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
What do you? So you gave us a 4, Dan, right? Love Me. Jagger 4.5, and then I gave it a 3. All right. Well, Jagger, out of all those movies behind you,
Yeah.
any single one of those movies that you would recommend to people if they haven't seen for our audience?
That I would
It doesn't have to be a one behind you, but I'm assuming, there is one behind you that you really like.
One-Eyed Jacks, the Marlon Brando movie. He directed it, half directed by him, half directed by Stanley Kubrick. That's a cool movie. Good Western.
Western?
Huh?
Western?
Yeah.
Western? Oh, that's funny.
It's a good one. It's really like Technicolor 50s Western style. Really nice.
One-Eyed Jacks.
Nice.
Yeah.
Got you. Connor, do you have one?
Yeah, I think with all the movie news we're getting this week, I'm going to recommend everyone my third favorite in the franchise and go revisit Scream 6. I think it's so much fun taking the franchise to New York and expanding this, lore. Stone, these hands are rated E for everybody. So
I love Scream 4. I think Scream 4 and Scream 2 is really good too.
Scream 4
what do you have?
Least favorite.
Scream 4 is so good.
Scream 4, I just don't like Emma Robertson at all.
Okay, Dan 2.0.
Hey, I watched the franchise first. That was my first analysis. Dan was behind.
True.
Okay. My bad.
It's like it's like a very popular movie, but I rewatched Enemy this week, and I think it's one of the best movies I've watched in like a very long time, and I just was able to like appreciate it so much more than the first time I watched it, and I would just encourage people to go back and watch it again. I think I've talked to a lot of people that are like
immediately after that.
Yeah, I did text you. And I'm not a huge Jake Gyllenhaal fan. I know you are. That's great. I'm not. But I thought he's amazing in that. So, that's my choice, I guess.
All right, for my pick, I'm glad I got my physical media back here. I got some old movies I've forgotten about and I love. This is what I grew up with that I absolutely love. Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou? These movies, the Odyssey that Christopher Nolan. This is a very probably different take that Christopher Nolan's going to do, but this thing stars John Turturro, George Clooney, Tim Blake Nelson, and John Goodman. Which, to be honest, I haven't watched this in forever. I did not realize that was John Turturro because he doesn't have hair. in this movie. He's bald in this movie. Holy shit.
I've never seen
Anyways, this movie's so good, but here, let me tell you what the best part of this movie is, Connor. Ready? The soundtrack is so fucking good. It is so banging. There's so many songs in this movie. Imagine Christopher Nolan comes out and there's like 15 songs of Christopher Nolan's Odyssey. Probably not going to happen.
Speaking of,
But
sorry,
go ahead.
I was
I was just say, really funny movie. A lot of entertainment in that. I mean, John Goodman squishes a frog with his hands, and it's like one of the funniest things I've ever seen. So,
I was gonna say, speaking of John Turturro, last night I watched episode 4 of Severance. It's one of the best episodes of TV I've ever seen in my life. It's the best episode of Severance.
Really?
It's disgusting.
holy shit!
And John Turturro's like a big piece of it. So
I just rewatched I'm still trying to. Me and my wife finally sat down. We started to rewatch the first season because we watched it when it came out, and I didn't want to watch the second season just yet. So I think we should be able to catch up by the time hopefully season 2 ends.
yeah, nice, good show.
Dude, I'm so pumped. Yeah, this is by the Coen brothers, by the way. So, and Michael Willington of the Chicago Tribune said it was the best film of the year. So, of when it came out.
Nice. Shout out, Mike.
Probably something like that. Yeah. So, anyways, Jagger, my guy, thanks for coming on. Don't you possibly have some films out there that aren't on your shelves on YouTube? Something that you work on or something like that?
Yeah. I've been working on and off trying to get better at filmmaking. I'm currently going to a film high school thing. I'm getting better. I'm working on it. But those are on OJ Productions on YouTube. Yeah, go check those out. I think they're pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, let people know where to find you too on social media, Jagger.
Oh yeah. On Instagram, Jagger Film Reviews. Same with on TikTok. I'm trying to figure out how to get back on TikTok. Jagger Film Reviews on YouTube. I started an account on there. I'm gonna start posting on there as well. Letterboxd, Jagger Film Fan. I do a lot of stuff on there. And that's about it. Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, this was great. I just, like I said, appreciate the way you talk about movies. It's refreshing. I think you have, just a good view on things, and it's good to see.
Appreciate that a lot. Good to see you guys as well.
I say next week is going to be really interesting. We're going to discuss a genre that we never discussed before. I think we're going to be talking about kung fu movies or martial arts films, which is really exciting. And we're going to have a martial arts expert on to discuss them as well, who's also a films fan, which is sick. But the movie that we're going to highlight is Love Hurts, starring Ke Huy Quan, that's coming out for the Valentine's Day weekend, which also, I guess, Hard Eyes is pretty good. We're not going to talk about Hard Eyes, but I'm excited to watch that this week after Dan's recommendation.
Yeah.
But yeah, so be looking forward to that, everybody. But hey, thanks for joining us another week for Goodwill Podcasting. Look at us, right? Who would have thought? Not me, I'll tell you that. But gone this week, though. Watch Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Listen to the soundtrack. Man of Constant Sorrow is one of the best songs I've ever heard in my life. There's a guy who won The Voice who auditioned with that song, and he won for that reason. I'm just saying. Anyways, fuck yeah, guys. Have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us. Tune in next week. But until then, go outside. Sit on a park bench. Touch some grass. Call up your friends. Check out Jagger's shit. And we'll see you then. Peace out, everybody.